Good morning, everybody, on day two of our workshop. Thank you for coming back. Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are if you're in St. John's. I hope the shoveling was not too bad. Heard about a big snowstorm over there. Um, Awesome, Stephen. So we're gonna get going. The first few minutes, 15 minutes now. Any Q&A, any questions about yesterday? So we left off with X lookup yesterday, and if statement. I know those are kind of tough questions. So I'm gonna open up my Excel spreadsheet again before I continue, and then from there, if you have any questions, then we'll jump on to them on the screen here. Okay. And if you have any other suggestions, I'm always up to improving the class and how I teach. So any feedback that you give me, positive or negative, I always take it to how do I improve it for the next class. Okay, so the if statement was this, okay? And it got a little bit more, and you see that I didn't save any of my work because kind of I use it for teaching all the time, so I don't keep any of my stuff. But we were talking in the beginning of doing a Boolean. We did like greater than 7 million. Then the second one, we said, oh, now we've got to test for two things, different columns, tier, tier 3, and then spendings less than 1 million. Then we got even more. We said, oh, we want to test for more things and more things. And we said, when you want to test for more things, you can. You would either need and or both of them at the same time. And then we started nesting them, which gets really tricky. Then at the end, we said, okay, you could use something called ifs, which test multiple Booleans to get you multiple values or value of true for each of the cases. So they're in pairs. You do a test, you give the result if they pass. So what that means is you never have a fail. If you fail the test, you never get any results. What that means is you have to have an exit point at some point. Okay. So for instance, I'll give you an example here. I'll write it over here. And I'm just going to give you an example of this, and then give you an example of the X lookup, and then move a little bit further, okay? Everything we talked about yesterday is kind of I call it opening the can of worms. And today, I'm going to open the biggest can of worms. I think Helena yesterday was mentioning Power Pivot, and awesome. I've taught for a long time. In the last little while, I was expecting people to talk about it. It's a super big can of worms, and it's so important. We'll go into that a little bit after the first break here. But let's go back to this. If statement. So if I have a case, let's say the case is, it's equal to tier 3, right? And so I know in this one in particular, I have to say if it's equal to tier 3 and it's less than, I'm just going to say if it's equal to tier 3, then what? Then it's, let's say, tier 3, okay? And then you say the next one, well, if the spending, and I know I'm not in the same, let me check it, same row? It's same row. So I am in the same row. So if that's less than 1 million, okay? So as you go on building these kind of pairs of a test, a result, a test, and then you can say the result is less than, let's say, less than 1M, you can see that it never has a result if it's false. So the way to build the exit, is you have to say, well, 1, comma, and then you say exit. And I'm doing this, I don't mean you need to do exactly this, but if you build a case that says, worst case scenario, if you hit this last case, it's always going to be true. So when you hit this last case of 1, means you've already failed every single test beforehand. And at the end, you say, well, exit, or no test passed, to let yourself out. Okay, so if you don't have this, what you'll just get, you'll just probably get a 0, because the default of false is 0. So build yourself one of these to kind of build the exit out. It is not easy. The trickiest part is if you don't use the ifs and you end up using if and then you go inside, it gets really, really tricky real quick. So before I leave this section with you, if you see the above, try to go through every single spreadsheet here by its instructions, and you can see here the answers afterwards. Okay, so you can try to do every single one of these, and if you're like, I can't get it, if you just flip over to this page here, let me make it a little bit bigger, and I show you the formulas. Remember, the quick key for showing formula is Control grave symbol. grave symbol is that tilde below escape. Then you will see, oh, here's the result of if and or, very much what we talked about. And then at the very end, you can use a nested if. This is the very complicated one. Yeah. And remember, like when you get to this stuff, don't get nervous. Don't be like, oh my gosh, let me get a coffee. It happens. But the best way to go through it is to simply double click in the beginning. You know, as complicated as any if statement gets, it's three things. So you see, is that first thing there? The test. Yes. How about the next one? So you iterate through this as you click. And if it's moving along and you're understanding what's happening, so you see, first, this is like ifs, right? So first case is chemicals, you get material. Second case is a brand new if statement. So you click behind the next if statement. You go, okay, so 1, 2, 3 again. 1, 2, 3. Oh, the next thing. So you go to, okay, the third thing is a new if statement. So you always focus on one if statement at a time. So you say, okay, the test, this, oh, another. So that's how you would go through the whole logic of this with ease and with, you can kind of locate where the problems are. If you didn't have this, just as bonus material here, if you couldn't go through this, you're like, something's wrong. I don't know. It's not letting me enter. That's typically the case. What I would do is I would take one if statement and just break it out into one separate column and test every single if statement to make sure they work. And if they don't work, you know which part doesn't work because it won't let you enter anyway with the if statement. Okay. So just so you know, break it out, find out where the problem is, and then solve that one and then put it back together. I know it's really tedious, but if you do this again, every single one of these things I'm talking about, you do it 3 times to 5 times about, you either click and go, oh, I got it. Or you go, oh my gosh, I hate this thing, which happens, okay? Which happens. But as you practice more and more, you'll find out, oh, I got this today. And then, oh, I got this to yesterday. And when you put it together, hopefully it starts to help you along, okay? Any other questions with this page before I move to XLOOKUP? And if everyone's okay, just a thumbs up so I can move to the XLOOKUP. Perfect. Thank you, Stephen. Awesome, everybody. Couple more hands up. Perfect. Okay, I got all the hands up, I think. So we'll move on to the next one. Hands down, please. I'm not going to save this. And let me just see my other sheet. And the sheet I'm going to is the 07 VLOOKUP index match XLOOKUP. We didn't look at this yesterday. We kind of stuck in just the one sheet. Sorry, I'll just have these two open just in case we need to refer back. But as I'm closing and opening these, I know it's kind of annoying that I'm opening and closing. The reason I'm doing it is because I don't want to save anything. I want to just open it fresh. Is the following. We did all the VLOOKUP in the previous sheet. And because we said, you know, if you write an if statement, but things update, if you use an if statement, you have to rewrite or update the if statement in order for it to work. But if you use a VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP, it's much easier because especially if you have a table involved, the table will update and your XLOOKUP automatically updates looking up to an array. Okay. So, one thing that I want to talk about with VLOOKUP and XLOOKUP, in case you had any trouble here, this is really, really important. And if you don't take a class or you never heard this, please take this to note, okay? When you look up a VLOOKUP value, okay, and you're matching from where you are, let's say this guy right here, so what you see in front of me, your screen here is a drop-down list of looking up supplier name, and you can return any information. So you're always looking up from somewhere with some value, and you're looking up in a reference. So that reference is referencing this column, and then you can look up other information. When you're doing that, it's very important to know the following, okay? And this is where things get really crazy when you find VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP not working properly. The value that you're looking up, particularly if it's if it's text, it has to be pretty much exact or you use one. But particularly if it's a number, okay? VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP, the way that the VBA is built, so I don't know if you knew, but every single function or formula is written in VBA, in program. Someone programmed it. The number of the number of significance, so the decimals of significance for VLOOKUP is 17 digits. And you might be like, wow, I'm not going to use it. If 17 digits, so what does that mean? That means if you're looking up a 1.0000000 and it happens to be, passing the 17th decimal place, it's not going to be very accurate. Okay. So you might, oh, I'm not going to use this. Just so you know, when you're using numbers, there's a lot of times when you calculate number on top of number on top of number, and you think that the number will be exact, but it isn't in the background. If the number of significance that you're looking at is past 17 decimal places, and you just look up as you usually do, you can end up with errors. And these are real errors. So what you have to do is when you're looking up a value, a number, you want to look up the rounded value and you want to look up the rounded reference. So you want to make sure you put in the formula, like in here. What I mean is this. You need to write round the value. That way you're sure the decimal places is cut off at the right place. If you don't round it, what happens is automatically it's the calculation in Excel calculates up to the 15th decimal place. But VLOOKUP looks on beyond 15, looks up to 17th decimal place, which means you can have that error if you're doing a lot of calculations and the calculations in the background is not exactly the exact. Think about a division. You do a couple of divisions. Well, it's not going to be exactly the same. So how many decimal places is it gonna cause you a problem? Most of the time we don't see this, but there will be chances where you're like, VLOOKUP, XLOOKUP is not working. Well, yes, that's why the program is written for that kind of accuracy. Okay, just so you know. Okay, so VLOOKUP we mentioned yesterday. So if I'm looking at VLOOKUP, I'll do this quite quickly. If I go too fast, please let me know. But this is kind of a review, so I'm hoping that you're understanding this okay. VLOOKUP, we said lookup value is what are you going with to the reference book. So I'm over here on the yellow section, grab the reference of the supplier name. I go over to this section here, but remember the table array. So the difference between XLOOKUP and VLOOKUP is that VLOOKUP needs a reference, like a 2-dimension, okay? 1 to 2 dimension, 1 column or 2 column or 3 column. You have to highlight the entire array. Whereas XLOOKUP does not. XLOOKUP looks up the solo band energy, and it can look up 1 column and then return to you another column. So it's kind of segregated, okay? So this table array is not just this, okay? If you wanted to highlight a title, you could, but it doesn't really matter unless you want that to be part of your content. So I have to highlight this, and if I'm returning certain things, I have to note the 170R is where I'm at, times 1C, means column 1. Now this is column 2. This is column 3. As I roll over, I want you to note the number of columns. So you need to note this because the next parameter you have to put in is the column index number. The column index number is this. Yeah. So if I do this, I'll just do this. I'll say F4. Why F4? Because remember, if I don't lock this and I have to fill down or horizontally, this reference is going to move as we showed yesterday. So now the column, the index number, it depends on what I want back. If I want it back the category is in the 2, second column, I would just put 2.
Jason, quick question. How did you lock it again? I can't remember how you locked it.
Good question. When you get to the addressing of the array, once you highlight it, just hit F4. Like this. I'll redo it again so you can see.
Thank you.
So let's say I start from here, right? And I shift over 2 columns. I shift control down. So you see how this is still typing, yeah? So once that happens, once you're done with the addressing, you hit F4. And the thing you want to watch for is you want $ to appear on the entire red section. If it only appears on the L, you have to redo it. So right now I'm going to try F4. You see how the whole thing locks? And this can be a problem for some computers if your keyboard setup doesn't have this. So you might have to use like Control Shift F4 or something like that. Okay, maybe a different key. Hopefully that worked for you, Ori. Okay, so the next one, then we say, okay, which column do I want returned? Because I'm looking up this information not for no reason. I wanted to look up the reference to return information that I don't have. So here, if I want to return 2, which is the category, I put 2. And then remember what I said yesterday. If you didn't, go back to the video and watch it again. This last part is crucial. This last part, if you are matching up numbers, as we said, to the 17th decimal place accuracy, you would use approximate match when you're going through numbers, a list, an array of numbers, and it doesn't have to exist exactly as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so I can say like 1, 5, 10. So if I look up number 2, 2 doesn't exist, but it will be able to find between 1 and 5 that it belongs to one section. So that's the approximate match. We didn't do this example yesterday, but that's what this means. If we're matching up exactly a text for exactly text, then in here we would put exact match, or we could just put 0, which is exactly the same thing, right? So if we do that, XLOOKUP or XLOOKUP, VLOOKUP looks up the information, and there it is. I'm just gonna I'm just trying to show you the formula. I forgot what the formula is to show I wanted to display all the formulas up here for you. But this is VLOOKUP here in the yellow. And I'm just going to put below here the XLOOKUP. Okay, so we'll do the same thing. But this time, look, it's 1, 2, and 3 items only. So I look up a text, I match a particular column. And it's not an array. It's not 3 columns this time. So I say, okay, I match up this. I still have to F4. As long as I don't have a table, I have to do this. Or a named range, I have to do this. So I lock that. So this, but then I have to say, okay, it's segregated. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for a column index number. It's which column do I want returned? So maybe what I want returned is the supplier number. So then I highlight the supplier number, F4. And I'm just going to hit the XLOOKUP here just to show you, okay? So the lookup value is the same. The lookup array is just one column here. It can be more, but the lookup array is just one column here. Return array is just one column here. And then I can put if not found, can't find it. Yes? And we went to wildcard and stuff. Remember, anything in these square brackets are optional. So it's up to you. You don't have to use it unless you want to. So I can do this. And so nice and clean, I can see, oh, it's this, blah, blah, blah. And just to show you the difference between the two, make it a little bit bigger. VLOOKUP looks like this. XLOOKUP, it almost looked very similar, right? The first part's the same. This is almost the same, but it's L, this is J, and then, you know, column index number, and there's no column index number here. It's just literally what am I returning? And then instead of approximate, or it's defaulted. So if you didn't know, just so you know, this section here, the default, the 0 and the 1s, it's always at exact match as a default in the beginning for the XLOOKUP. And then one thing that is super cool about XLOOKUP, in case you didn't know, is that VLOOKUP looks up vertically. So it goes from the top to the bottom. And the first answer, so not here in particular, but here, when it looks up these suppliers, it looks up top to the bottom, and that's it. And when it finds it, it says, okay, what am I returning this? And it comes back. But in XLOOKUP, you can actually say, no, I want to see like last to first. So maybe you're looking up prices and you say, well, I don't want the first price you find. I want the last price you find. So then what it'll do is instead of from the top to the bottom, it'll go from the bottom to the up search. And so the last one it finds is the one that will return as a value, which is kind of cool. VLOOKUP also requires that you do some sorting sometimes, yeah? XLOOKUP allows you to sort your reference information before you look. This is quite important, right? So if you're looking up top to bottom, it's not A to Z, and you want it to be A to Z, well, then you can use this binary search to sort it before you start looking up. So these are all really cool options, okay? So in case you didn't know. Okay.
Jason,
Without further ado.
I think I have the exact same formula as you do.
Yeah.
But mine comes back just as like value. It doesn't do anything.
Mine too.
This one here? This one here?
Yeah, the XLOOKUP.
Okay, let's do it together again. So let me turn this off. So my result that I got is this. If you didn't get that, let's do it together. Erase that one, and we'll write it. We'll write the same result, retrieving the same result as the support and services above. That way you can compare exactly. Okay. So I'm going to say equals. So if you erase yours, just follow me along. Hopefully we can get to the same results here. So XLOOKUP, looking up this value. So it's not in the same row, comma, lookup array. So now we have to go to where are we matching this? Well, we're matching this over here. Shift Control down. I'm going to keep it slow so that we're exactly the same. There's nowhere weird. I'm going to F4 this to lock it, comma. And I'm going to just move my scroll over a little bit and say, I want to return the categories, Shift Control down, F4. And I'm going to close the bracket here. So I hope you've got this on your screen and looking exactly the same as mine. Check carefully.
Yep.
Okay. I hit enter. I should have exactly the same. Now, I know hopefully you got something different this time.
Yeah, I have my screen looks exactly like yours does now.
Okay, good. There is one trick that I didn't tell you guys yet. There's a lot of trickiness to VLOOKUP, XLOOKUP, and it has to do with like always the accuracy of lookup, which I told you guys already, and it has to do with the data type you're looking up, text and or numbers. But there's one more thing that's really important, and is the function called, you know how for numbers, I told you the solution for proper match is making sure you round your lookup values. Well, for text, the trick is that you use the function called trim. Trim. What does trim do? Trim, so we VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP the value, trimmed. What trim does is if there was, and this is the trickiest thing, if here I had a space, just like that, and I hit enter, okay? I hit enter. Oh, this one won't let me. Let me see if I can. If I have an extra space somewhere here, let me take off the data validation. If I have an extra space here, these will fail right away. Why? Because it's space S Solabem energy. It's not exactly, but how the heck are you going to see how many spaces there are before or after? That's exactly this point. The point of trim is that it removes any spaces before and it removes any spaces after, but no spaces in between, like the space between M and energy, Y and ink. So it keeps those, but any spaces beforehand is removed automatically, and any spaces after the dot or the period is removed. So if I do that before I do the cleanup process is a little bit longer. If I do all of that cleaning, either by rounding or trimming the lookup values, then it tends to weed out a lot of the problems that we see at work. Okay? I hope that's helpful to you. I hope that's helpful to you. I don't want to lose our time today because we have a huge chunk in pivot tables and Power Query that I don't want to lose. So if you're having trouble, please let me know. I will be giving more time later on for Q&A, but I do want to move on to the last thing about XLOOKUP. In case you didn't catch all this, XLOOKUP is very different than VLOOKUP in the sense that VLOOKUP can only look up one value at a time and return one value at a time, period. Unless you make it nested or you make it complicated, right? Or you fill in. XLOOKUP can actually do this. I can look up this entire list. What are you doing, Jason? Yeah, I'm going to look up that entire list. Really? Without filling down? Yeah, because XLOOKUP is actually a formula or function that can handle lists of values, and I can say, oh, look all of this up. Okay, where? Well, same place, here. Suppliers, F4. So sorry for my screen moving back and forth. All I'm doing is I just keep typing. Never move the screen by yourself. It just moves by itself. Okay, so I look up this entire list. Where? In this entire column. Okay, and what am I returning? Well, the same thing. I'm returning the same thing. The categories, F4. And the result is going to be exactly the same as if you did one XLOOKUP at a time or one VLOOKUP at a time and fill it down. But this time, look what happens. It just automatically outputs in the list exactly these matching ones, exactly for the column index numbers that we said in one go. So look at this. I got one formula going here. Remember about array formulas? We're not filling it down and filling it all up at XLOOKUP. The difference is efficiency. I'm a lot faster doing one line of programming than you doing, 7 or 6 lines, rows of program that you have to keep in Excel that you have to recalculate every single time versus I recalculate one formula. Results exactly the same. And last thing to wrap this up, if you didn't think XLOOKUP was cool, it can not only look up this direction, I can actually look up information horizontally. In what sense? Well, let me see this third 2.0. Who are the suppliers in table number 2? So I'm just trying to read this to do one more. I can actually look up in vertical direction and return horizontal direction, or I can return in different ways. So let me just read a little bit more carefully here. So use Excel as a single, yeah. Who are the suppliers in table 2.0? Oh, where are my suppliers? I don't have them anymore.
Our table of 2.0 has numbers in it.
Yours has numbers?
Yeah, the supplier number is completed on ours.
Maybe I erased mine. Let me close this one and open my download. Sorry about that. I work with the file too much that I erased some stuff. Let me open mine up. Oh, I think I deleted it. Oof. Okay. I'll try to take you through blind, okay? I'm pretty sure I can do it. Let me just desktop, supply chain, 7. This guy here. So if you can follow me along here, just oh, there it is. So this guy here, 2.0. Okay. So if my values that I look up is not vertical, but it's like this entire table, I would still be able to do the exact same thing. So if let's say these guys here are the supplier number, I want to know what are their actual names. Yeah. So normally with VLOOKUP, I would only go vertical, and then I have to probably write a couple times, right? Per column. In here, what I would do is I would say equals XLOOKUP. And lookup value, where is it? Well, it's not vertical this time. This is just the whole table here. No problem. And you don't have to lock it or anything. So I'll just comma. And where am I looking that up? Well, the first column. So I'm looking up this entire table this way, looking it up vertically. Remember what I was saying to you? Okay. And then what am I returning? Well, I'm returning the names, which is also vertically. And I hit enter, and I hit close round bracket and enter, and automatically I get all the output in the same way that I VLOOKUP. Now, there will be days where you do XLOOKUP or VLOOKUP or unique or any of the cool array functions, and you see an error message that says spill, okay? Typically, what spill means is that you have not given it space in order for it to output its results. So if my results was, like three columns, 3 by 3, but I had something written here, for example, not the XLOOKUP formula, then I'm going to get a spill error here, meaning, hey, I can't output the message because you have taken up the space. So I'm not going to overwrite your information. Alejandro, you had a hand up?
Yeah, Jason, every time I input the formula and I press enter, I don't get the result. The formula just stays there.
Ah, okay. Do you see the formula, like what you wrote?
Yeah.
Okay, try this, okay? Hit the button control and grave symbol. Grave symbol, the apostrophe or the button below escape. And it should go from like this to this.
Got it. Thank you.
Got it? Okay. Yeah. So that button, if you forget, just so you know, if you ever get stuck in that situation and you look under formulas, the button that I've been showing you, the control apostrophe or the control tilde, that's this button right here. Formula, show formula. So if you have this on, it'll look like that.
Got it. Okay.
You have to take it off. Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so I hope that's a little bit of an intro for XLOOKUP. Lots of cool things in there. but we have to move on. Okay, so I'm gonna I'll just minimize this in case we come back to it. And yesterday, we pretty much covered most of the stuff. Sorry. Except we didn't cover the aggregated math functions. This one you have to know. So for those of you that know this already, please bear with me. But for those of you that don't, this is really, really important, okay? So because it's related to pivot tables, it's related to fast calculation, okay? In what sense? Yesterday we did the if statement. You know how like you hated, I know we're not doing if statement anymore, but we did the if statement and we said, okay, how many over 1 million, 7 million? And we said, okay, now count, right? That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. Do we really have to do all that to get what we want? Don't we just want to know like how many spent over seven, like how many vendors spend over 7 million? Well, do I have to do all that to get the result? And the answer is no. You can actually do something called a count if, okay? And what is a count if? Well, a count if is this. First, on my data set, I do Control Shift L to bring the filters out again. And all a count if is mechanically is this. I say, oh, greater than 7 million, right? So I go to the column that I'm checking for this criteria and say, hey, number filters greater than 7,000,000. I press OK. So I filter for greater than 7 million manually. Yeah, that's not the point of this exercise. I just show you that what a count if actually does. Then I highlight this section here. What does that do? Well, when you highlight, it averages, it counts, and it sums. So in the sense of every time when I filter it, then I highlight it, this average, I can use something called average if. Well, what is the if? The if is if the filter is greater than 7 million in a particular column. Count if instead of count. So what is this saying? Well, I can say if it's greater than 7 million, well, then count for me how many there are. Or if it's a sum if, hey, if it's greater than 7 million, can you tell me the total, the sum of these spendings? Well, that's what count if, sum if, average if. That's the aggregated ifs. And I don't have to manually do all these filterings. All I have to do is the following. Count if, round bracket opening. Okay, and there's only two criterias. If you have never done this before, please write down these following notes for yourself if you're doing this again, okay? So COUNTIF has only two parameters inside, range and criteria. It looks like an if statement, but the syntax that you would use to compare is very different than a regular if statement. You'll see in a second here. Range, the first range that I was talking about, okay? So when you're talking about range, you're always talking about which column are you going to be filtering? Oh, this one here, right? So I would click here, Shift Control down. Don't forget to F4. So this is the range I'm going to be filtering. What am I filtering for? Well, that's the criteria. So the criteria is what am I filtering for? Greater than 7 million. But you normally in here, if statement, we would write like this, greater than, but that's not the syntax you need to write. What you would need to write is you have to write a quotation greater than 7,000,000. And then another double quote to close. Very different syntax. Like there's no cell to compare, Jason. That looks so weird. You're right. But that's how you would write a count if. Okay, so if I did that, I close the bracket. What it will do is it will go to this column that I've said, the first one. Then it will look for every single case in these rows here to see if, hey, is this 10 million greater than 7 million? Yes. Then it'll start counting 1. Is this greater than 7? Yes. 2. Is this greater than no? Then it'll skip until, oh, this one. And then it'll keep doing that until it gets all the way down. And that's what COUNTIF does. It'll tell you, hey, there's 7 records or vendors that have spent over $7 million. A lot easier. Sorry, I'm just trying to move my 7 million. So 7 million. So there's 7 vendors that have spent over 7 million. So never trust Excel. Okay, because of formatting, because of various things, never trust it. Just because you see a number, you need to verify this. So I say, hey, greater than 7,000,000. Are there 7? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, let. So here, 7, 7. So we don't have to do all that filtering. We can already know right away from one formula that that is true. I will do one more for you, and then what I want you to do is try the last one by yourself. So the first one is count if. Second one I'm going to show you is average if. Actually, I'll show you the sum if, more commonly used. Now, these count if and sum if can also be used as count ifs and sum ifs. And the work logic is the same as and or ifs. So you have pairs. You have which column am I checking? What am I checking for? What am I filtering for? Which column am I checking? And what? So that's kind of the gist of it. Count if only has 2 parameters, as you saw, range and criteria. Range, again, is the column you are doing the filtering. Criteria is what are you filtering for? Yeah. Sum if is a little bit the same, but it has one extra part. So range is saying which column am I filtering? Oh, that's the same. So this, F4. And then criteria, that's the same. What are you filtering for? Oh, greater than 7 million. But remember, this part is a little bit different because it's not an if statement. It's not an if statement. This is a sum if statement. So the logical comparison is what you're filtering for, not just comparing against something like one cell is greater than 7 million and filling it down. Okay. Then it has this square bracket here, which is really important. It's optional, but what it's telling you or asking you for is, okay, so you're going to this column, filtering for 7 million. Fine. And what do you want me to add? Because this is sum if. So if you pass this filter with all the records that are filtered, what do you want me to do? Oh, I want you to add. Okay, well, the same column that I'm filtering by, I'm going to add it. So instead of saying, are you greater than 7 million? So the first row, row 12, E12, are you greater than 7 million? Yes. So 10,914 is going to be added. Are you greater than 7? Yes. So this is first one's going to be added. The second one, skip, 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 add. So every single time when it passes the test, it adds it up. It's like a cumulative or running total of, let's say. So you can see, oh, the total is 617,50620. So for the last time, we say, hey, never trust a formula unless you have verified. So I say, hey, are you greater than, so 61750, so I'm going to say, are you, so these ones are greater than 700,000. So these are 7, we verified, but is the total 61750, 6175062? Exactly the same. So it saves you the time of filtering and then adding and filtering. You could just write one line that does that for you. If that makes sense for you, can you please help me write the following? I'm just going to shrink this down a little bit. I want you to write, of course, the remaining average if. Can you go ahead and write an average if? So instead of just giving me a sum, give me the average if of all those that have spent over 7 million. So the logic or the filter is the same. But in here, instead of a sum range, it's an average range. So the writing of it is exactly the same as sum if, but the result is it averages after a filter. So give that a try. And once you have it done, thumbs up or hands up, okay? Awesome, awesome. And if you're getting this done quickly, perfect, Stephen, thank you. And you're like, can I do more? Can I have a challenge? If you would like the challenge, I would say, hey, why don't you do a count ifs? So now instead of saying 7 million, can you say like over 7 million and tier 2 or tier 3? Well, how do I do that? You do this exact same thing, count ifs, and then you go through which column to compare, which column, what to compare or what to filter, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So I'll just complete this as well. I'm lazy, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all this literally and just go here and say average. Oh, see, forgot the equal sign. Average ifs or if here. I think I lost my paste. Let's see. Oh, there it is still. So, and then enter. Okay. In the COUNTIFs, you will see it's exactly the same as ifs statement. So criteria range is saying which column am I filtering by? Criteria, what am I filtering by? So 1 and 1, then you see the next pair. Criteria 2, so if I comma, comma, you see criteria 2, what's the next column you're filtering by? It could be the same column or the next column. And then maybe you want to filter for something else. Maybe you want to filter, is it greater than 7 million? And it's yes for under contract. Or if it's 7 million and it's greater than 5 million. So you want to set, you could do all kinds of stuff like that. So again, criterias are always what are you filtering for? And criteria range or range is always which column are you doing the filtering? Okay. So I saw the 2 hands up. Corey, thank you. I hope you guys are doing okay. If you've completed this, count if, sum if, average if, just the first level, not the ifs, put up your hand. If you're ready to move on to the next topic, you've completed the count if, sum if, average if, put up your hand, okay? So I see 5 so far. Okay, I think we're doing okay, right? Anyone not okay for us to move on? Perfect. Okay, so again, if you're struggling from this, you can use, just so you know, I use these examples that I give because it's easy to use, but you can always go back to, let me just show you which one it belongs to, aggregated. You can always go back to these Excel files, and there will be a sheet with answers, just one after the other, that allows you to do practice. Okay, so count if, average if. I just stayed here because this is easy to show the example, but there's also, like, I think it's example 6 or 7 that allows you to go through this again on your own. Okay. All right, I'm going to minimize this guy. And the last but not least, everyone can put their hands down. Last but not least is number 8. Number 8. This is a very simple topic, but hopefully could be useful to you depending on the cases, okay? So far, everything we've done so far is kind of manual. Today, we'll get to some automated processes. Hopefully, that will help you more. So 08, flash fill, remove duplicates, text to column. Okay, so that's what I'm going to right now. That's what I have opened. And so if you're ready and you're on the same page as me, put your hands down. Perfect. Awesome. So flash fill is a very old tool that is located in Home. If you go all the way to the very right-hand side where it says Editing Group, you'll see a fill. Remember the filling down yesterday? Kind of similar to that, but this one with more of a pattern. So if I click fill, you have flash fill, which is down here. Okay. And then you have fill series, which is you dictate. So let's say if I'm generating dates and I want to generate, every 7 days, all the dates of every 7 days from any date, I can use series here. This is not what we're doing right now, but I just want to show you. In the series section, you can state, I want to jump up 7 days, 7 units from a specific date, and then they'll generate all the patterns for you. But flash fill, what it does is it tries to, the best way to do this is, when you shop online a lot on your Google cookies, it has all these saved things that you search for. And then it starts to tell you, oh, you're looking for G, you're looking for all these Gs, right? Kind of like that, the IntelliSense. But what it does is, for example, if I want to generate an email address with the first name and last name, but I want the first letter of the first name and the full last name at hotmail.com, let's say. Okay. So in here, I would just do something like this. S.formac And don't worry, we're not going to do this more than once. At hotmail.com. Okay. And hit that enter one time only. Okay. Then the cool thing is I can highlight the example, go down the rest of the way, and then all I have to do is the following key. Control E. And it will automatically try to generate for you information that may or may not be correct, because remember, it's IntelliSense. It's trying to say, hey, this is what you want. Hey, this is what you want. Yes and no. Yes and no. So like, for example, it got most of it right? If you look down, it got most of it right. But like .coms become like, well, how the heck, right? So when that happens, you can just go back to the second guy and say, no, what you're doing is not right. It's .com. And you could try to correct it. Let me see. I must have typed something wrong here. Look, see. Typically, when you do this, okay, and I'll do this again. So these two, I'll erase these guys. Typically, when you do these, the flash fill will automatically correct itself. So if I do this, I'll try it again. See, okay. So you see, I said, hey, it's like this. So you give it an example, and you say, hey, I want this example. Then you highlight it, and then you highlight all the blank area where you want it to generate, and then it will try to generate for you a pattern. And this works particularly well with text. Not so much with numbers, because numbers, it's turned into a text before it tries to generate patterns. So as you can see, if a number is turned into a text, then rounding is going to become quite an issue, right? So if you understood what you saw what I just did here, and you're like, oh, cool, let me try, yeah? So for example, you try, okay? So for example, instead of writing like text to column or like, text split, you're doing all kinds of formulas, just say, hey, can you generate for me this pattern? I want like, I just want to know like, like Rosa Smith at code. I don't want to know any of that. I just want to know like the company name, like QUO Tech. Yeah, like that. So can you generate for me, just give an example here, highlight the example and everything underneath, and Control E and generate for yourself the company names from the emails. Go ahead and try it. And once you're ready and done, hands up. Perfect. Perfect. Awesome. 6 hands up. Awesome. I think everyone's doing okay. 7. Awesome. Okay. Hands back down. So Control E looks like Superman here. Oh, it's so easy. You know as well as me that as you use Google, a lot of times when you start to tell it to do stuff, sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah. For example, let's try something else here. So make initials. Basically, let's try and break it, is my point, okay? Corey and Heather, I hope you guys are okay. If not, perfect. Yeah, awesome. So here, I'm going to try to make the initials. I'll say R dot A, yeah? Dot. I'll say, okay, generate for me the initials. So feel free to follow me along and do the same thing, yeah? R dot A dot. And then highlight everywhere you want to generate. You can Control E is the quick key. If you wanted to see the actual step, it's home, fill, flash fill. That does exactly the same thing, okay? I know Control E is not F, like that's a different way of accessing the ribbons and the tabs, okay? So if I do this, I get the same thing, but if you see the first one, correct, not correct. It's supposed to be L and then M, correct? So right? So that means this is wrong. So I'll say, okay, no. I want L, E, L. And it doesn't really matter uppercase or lowercase. You can dictate the pattern and it'll follow you along. So I'll say like that. And then you can see, I don't know if you saw, there was kind of a flash. And what happens is it tries to regenerate the flash fill. And so if I look down here I have Koom Young, which previously said Koom, probably a dot Y, and then Lacey, yeah? But it just says Koom dot L because it's following your next level of correction. So it's correcting it. If it doesn't correct it, you saw what I did. I would highlight the first couple, right? And then keep going down past your examples to where you want to generate more information, and then Control E to try to get to a result that you want. Not perfect, but it is worth a try sometimes to see if you can generate information quickly. It does not have any formulas behind, and it cannot, in case you're like, oh, can I generate formulas? No, it can't generate formulas, which means you can't translate this later on. It can just give you a result, and that's pretty much it. Okay. So there's a lot more practice down here. I'm not going to go through all of these, but you feel free to try it. But I will try one more thing down here just to show you in terms of numbers. If you're trying to use flash fill or Control E with numbers, sometimes you'll get into some problems, okay? So dates, that's okay. So you could try this as well. Again, these are not really dates. So you look at it, you're like, this is a date. Is it really a date? Because this is a text, isn't it? Isn't a date supposed to be like 2018, like aligning to the right? Like this? Oh, sorry, typo. See how a real date's supposed to be on the right-hand side? However, this is on the left-hand side. And typically when you do a download from a database of any kind, the data comes out as a text because it's easier to electronically transfer from one database to the other. So typically all the data is transferred into a text before it's moved around and then data typed later. So that means when you try to take this and generate a date, it's going to give you some problems. But the point of the last exercise is this. What if I say, hey, I want like 9 and like 39. And then the rest of the way, maybe I'll say, no, I want 10. What does that mean? Well, I wanted to like, hey, give me the first, so like no decimal places. And I want you to round up like 9.89, that's 10. 39.36, that's 39. And maybe in case you didn't, I want this to be 18, right? So you say, okay, got it, Excel. I'm gonna go down, I'm gonna Control E, and it says, what? Can't do it. Control E, it says, I don't see your pattern. Why? Well, because these are first converted into a text. And when it's turned into a text, you can't turn a John into a 10 or Jason into a 30 or 40 because they're not related. So when you're saying, oh, okay, the pattern is this. Well, 9.89 will never have a pattern for 10. It doesn't understand numbers rounding. 39.36. Well, I got the 39, but how is that the same pattern from the previous? It's trying to read patterns. You go to 18. Well, there's no 18 here. I don't know what are you doing? So in terms of numbers here, you'll never get to it. So even if I do, let's say I keep it simple. I say, oh, you know what? Don't round. Just give me the first 2 digits. 17, right? So if I go like this and I go all the way down and then Control E, yes, it can extract just the text part. So 9, 39, 17, 14, 20. But it never cares about any of the rounding. Not because it just cuts it off, but because it turns into a text before it can work with the pattern. So just a warning, good and bad. Yeah, good and bad. Yeah, cool. But after a while, the shine kind of falls off, and you're like, okay, it's all right. It's all right. So we call this a flash fill or Control E tip, okay, or trick. All right. Let me just check the time. 10:30. We're doing pretty good with 10 minutes ahead, which is awesome. If you don't mind, let's talk about the biggest elephant in the room here, pivot tables. I'm not going to save this. And I'm going to jump ahead to pivot tables here. This is why I don't use slides, because we're talking about Excel. So let's just focus straight in on the data. Okay. Okay, so the last topic this morning before we move on, pivot table. I'm on the file 09, pivot table reference guide workbook. Okay, so from the show of hands yesterday, I think there was only 3 out of 9 people that have worked with pivot tables before. Is that not correct? So put up your hand one more time right now if you do use pivot tables before, or right now you've used pivot tables before. Okay, so I got 5 hands up, better than yesterday. Better yesterday. I'm glad. The reason why I'm laughing is I'm not trying to make fun or anything like that, but if you don't use pivot tables, you should. You know why? Because you know the count if and the average if and the sum ifs that we just did, you can do exactly the same thing. You know, like picking a column and filtering and then summing. picking a column and filtering and averaging. You can do exactly the same thing without a formula at all. That's what a pivot table is, okay, in a nutshell. But there's more to it. And hopefully I'm going to add value for those of the 5 people that, or 4 people that use pivot tables. I've used pivot tables for decades as well. And there's a couple of cool things that you may not have heard of that I'm going to show you today. Okay, let's start with the easy. In the very beginning, I have some instructions. I usually I usually ignore instructions. Sorry, I go straight to the original data. Okay, and I just want you to note something here. So here, my friend Ian, he's running a pet shop, and he wants to compare between pet shops. You know, the prices and like how many people offer certain pets, how, and you know where he can find these pets. So you can see like. First one, Ben's Black Market Animals. So you can see here, when I click on this, if you're with me yesterday, you know that if there's a table design at the top, this is a table. So if I click this, I should see, table number 3. Wonderful. If I click the next one, I also see table design here. I see, table number 4. I click the next one, table number 5. Now, in yours, I've worked with this file quite a bit last night. So in yours, you might not have any table at all. That's totally fine. The point of me showing you this is I want to show you the data comes in like this. Okay. And I think there's only 3 or 4 shops. Okay. So 4 shops. But the point of me showing you this is, okay, there's adoption availability. It's in the last column for the first Ian's pet on budget. And then the Ben's Black Market, you don't see adoption is like the first column. So the columns are not in the same position. So you look at the next one, it looks okay, but they're not matching for all of them. So this will make consolidation a little bit tricky, right? So if I want to consolidate all of them and then run a pivot table, it's going to be tricky because the columns don't match. Don't worry. After the break, I'll show you how to do this really easily without copying and pasting. Just a heads up, if you're ever doing copying and pasting for like more than 20 minutes of your day, the same thing every single day, you gotta stop. You gotta stop. Okay, I'm gonna show you a way to not do that. Hopefully, if you're doing lots of copy and pasting, a lot of things can go wrong, and it's really boring, right? You know, like, can I automate this? Can I hire another person to do this? Yes, that's use a tool to what it's supposed to be doing. Okay, so. I have the next sheet called consolidated data, which already consolidated all the data here for you. Okay, so all of the shops have been consolidated. All of the animals have been in the same column, and they're all matching A to G, all the same column. Wonderful. Then in the data section, the consolidated and data section, pretty much it's the same thing. So what it means is you have a copy of it, and then you have the sandbox data to play with, let's say. Okay. So what is this called? Well, look, the data. So I'm on the 4th tab now, past the consolidated data. 4th tab called data. Well, this data is a table. And what is it called? It is called a data. Okay, the better way to name a table is not just leave it as like that. You should actually name it something like T data. Why? Well, because if you leave it as T data, you'll know like this object or this slicer or this blah, blah, blah. What is the actual object? Well, it's a table, blah, blah, blah. Or it's a T slicer, or it's a, R named range. If you don't leave that annotation, it's kind of difficult for you later on to figure out, well, what is this object? Okay, so I'll leave this as data, just that doesn't really matter what for now, okay, because there's only one table. Okay, so I'm going to go to the exercise 1, and I'm going to show you really straightforward how to use a pivot table. This is why people use it all the time, because it's so easy. All you have to do, I'm here. It really doesn't matter where you are. You could be in a blank cell, or you could be in the data set itself. It doesn't matter, okay? But in this case, I'm here. And all I have to do to consolidate or summarize my data with a pivot table is the following. I go straight up to the ribbon Insert, and pivot table is right here. You click it, and you see how it has no proper range here. Like table and range is asking for the address or for the table name or the range address, right? So you see this exercise, blah, blah. So if I erase this, I say data. Why data? Well, because data is your table, right? And then be careful here. Look at what's here. When I first learned pivot table, I'm like, whatever, cool, okay, done. Wait, read it. There is your source data, fine. Choose where you want to place it. Okay, well, I'm on the sheet right now, I5 of exercise 1. So you see existing worksheet, I5, right? Exercise 1, I5. If you want it to be a new sheet, you can just say create a new sheet. Up to you, but I'll leave it as is. But most importantly, look at this. Choose whether you want to analyze multiple tables. Add this data to the data model. Data. Which data? This data? Well, what it's asking you, this is really, really important. And I was reading the notes in this thing. And just in case you didn't know, we spend all that effort making tables. And you're like, yeah, tables are great. It expands, and my formulas are updated properly. Wait. It's more than that. Tables that you make can be analyzed all together in one pivot table. What? No, I have to consolidate it and I can make one pivot table, right? Yeah. Wait. You can actually consolidate many. You saw this file in particular had 3 tables. We consolidated them together, by VStack or by Power Query, and then we made a new. What do you mean? Well, what I mean by that is you don't need to do that. You don't actually need to add all of them together. We'll show this a little bit later. But what this last option is telling you, hey, would you like to add this and start building a data model? And what a data model is a power pivot. What is a power pivot? A power pivot is like Access. You actually can do a database inside of Excel if you wanted to, straight from your Excel tables. Power BI, for example, for those of you that have heard of it. Power BI is fed from data from somewhere, no? Power BI is actually, if you wanted to, you can export your data model, your Power Pivot, straight into Power BI, and then your Power BI can run. So we used to talk about Access a lot. Not so much anymore. Why? Because you could actually do all of that right here in Excel directly. And you'll say, no, but like Excel only has a million rows. Remember what I said to you yesterday. You do have 1 million rows in the sheet, but when you start using the data model, your limit in rows is infinity. Infinity. You can have as many rows as you want as your computer can handle by memory. So when we talk about data model here, if you check this one box here, it's not just, oh, now it has this option. No. What it actually means is, do you want access to a new engine? Yes. But right now, let's keep it simple. We'll get to the new engine shortly, okay? So I'll leave this open like this. I'll press OK. And now, because I've consolidated all the work, you can see like, hey, like all of the columns that I had in the consolidated is all here, right? So if you don't know, you don't remember this, if I go back to my data, at the top title, remember this is why this table is so important to have a title. These titles here are now ready for you to drag and drop. Drag and drop for what? Drag and drop for consolidation. In what sense? In this count if, sum if, average if sense, is that if you drag any of these titles into a box, what it will do is it's filtering by specific something, but I didn't filter anything. If you don't filter, if I throw animal into a particular box, it will give me a unique list of animals. Watch this. See the animals? I drag it into the row section, and look, right away, I have all the animals in one unique setting. So I'm filtering by all that. But inside Ape, isn't there more than one line? Yes, that's the whole point of this. So first I say, this is how I want to group my data. And I can say, well, what about the price? So I can say average. So you can decide any of these. You can just check on or off, and it will directly put into one of these 4 boxes for you. And it was try to consolidate information for you. For example, for Ape, this is a sum of price just right now. So the total price for all the apes in all the stores totals up to 39,178. In the past or before this lesson, we would have to do equals sum if for ape, adding up the price column. But now, look, I didn't even have to do any of that. this is automatic sum ifs for me, right? Of filtering under the animal column for each of these animals. And then summing for me in the price column, each sums when it's filtered for ape, what is the total in prices column of the total, summing. So it automatically does this for me, literally just a drag and drop. So if I'm like, nah, I don't want that. I don't want this. Just tell me the pet shop. Tell me how much like the prices, like how much do they hold? How much inventory do they hold? And I say, oh, okay, look, pet shop, some. So this box, you can drag and drop all you want. That's really in a nutshell, what a pivot table is it does a sum if, count if, average if for you, literally by a drag and drop into these boxes. Now, before I throw you into the fire to practice, is the following. These 4 boxes, okay, is called pivot table fields. This can be taken off of this and put somewhere else if it's bothering you, or it can be put back here like this. And if you don't like this setting, you can hit this gear and you can arrange your setting in a different way. Maybe you want to see more or less depending on the case. Okay. And if you lose this field altogether, let's say like, oh, where is it? I lost it. All you have to do is just click back to the object, in this case, pivot table. And at the top, pivot table analyze and the tools up here, right? Design. And all you have to do is hit this field list to bring that box back. Okay, so not to worry. Anytime you lose it, just click that back. It'll come back to you right here, and then you can do whatever you want. Now, before I throw you into practice, these 4 boxes are very important where you place them. In what sense? In the sense that you don't really, you can play all you want in the rows box, in the columns box, in the filters box, but the part you have to be careful of is the values box. Because the point of all these summaries is the numbers, right? So I'm summing the prices. And so if I say I throw pet shop, a text, into the value section, well, I can't add Ben's blah, blah, blah. I can only count how many. So what am I getting here? So what you're getting here is how many times Ben, so in your data here, so how many times Ben's pet shop appears in records. So this is how many records you have. So that's not very useful. So the only part you have to be careful of is what you throw into the values section. So a drag and drop means I can put the pet shop maybe on the top, and I'll do the animal here at the rows. So what did I just do? Well, I labeled, I threw the animals section categorized uniquely in the row section, and the pet shop at the top. Okay, so now I can see like, oh, hey, look, like ape is available in Ben's and in Stuart's exotic. So, right, so I can see various combinations of where things are at, crossing the X and the Y. So when you see this is a sum ifs. What? Yeah, before you had the pet shop, it was just a sum if, because you're only filtering by ape. So sum if. If you have pet shop at the top, what you're actually doing, this number that you're seeing, is a sum ifs for a column to filter by ape and for a column to filter by pet shop, Ben. And so every single one of these crisscrosses are filtering for a column, then adding. So this is a sum ifs result. This is what a pivot table is, except I don't have to write any formulas. Yay! Good and bad. There's always pros and cons, yeah? Pros and cons. So I hope this is a good start to you. What I want you to do right now is I'm going to remove all these guys. I'm going to say, hey, if pivot table is that easy, drag and drop, can you please drag and drop something into your boxes? Go ahead, give it a try.
Hey, Jason, I'm having a problem trying to get the actual data from the sample data.
Oh, okay. Do you have this data sheet there?
I do, but when I
do.
create my pivot table, it's not picking up that information.
Okay, no problem. When you click on your data there, is it a table?
No.
It's not. Okay, that's the problem. So no problem here. So what I want you to do is go to that data and Control A. Select all.
Oh, I see the problem. It was just labeled differently.
Yeah, yes. So yeah, so you can either name it a table, make it a table, and then create a pivot, which is what I have, or you can just simply highlight the information and insert pivot table. It will be the same thing, just the
Okay.
address will be different.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
No worries. Give it a try. And once everyone's done your kind of playing around with drag and drop, put your hand up that you've done that already. Thank you, Heather. Stephen, perfect. Oh, lots of hands. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Good. 6 hands up. Awesome. Okay, so good. That's move. So you can see how easy it is to generate pivot tables. Now, how you layer the pivot table is really, really important. Yes. So how you pivot this really depends on what analysis, what questions you have for this data set, right? So the more important part is as you use Excel more and more, Excel is just a tool. It really is just a tool. The important part is your question. What are you trying to solve? And is this the best tool for it? And if it's not, maybe there's a different tool for it. So you don't get stuck on, oh, Excel's great. Yeah, it is, but depends on your actual problem that you want to solve. So what I mean by that is this. So I'll say, okay, well, what do I want to know about this? So I look at this data, I say, okay. And this might not be your question, huh? So I say, well, I want to know like which pet shop, what's the average price for a certain animal? That's what I want to know. And other than that, I also want to know like, well, how quickly can I adopt the animal? Is it this year? Is it next year? Is it this month? Is it next month? Right? I want to know how much and how quickly. So if that's the case, I'll go back to the same. You can see that here's lots of practice for you on the other ones. I'm not going to go through all of them, so I'll show you kind of on the same file all the different variations of it. So I'll say, I want to know like the animal. Fine. And the price. Fine. And remember, these prices are sum of price. Well, sum of price is not telling me much because sum of price is just all let's say if there's 10 apes, that's just total of 10 apes. I want to know like what's the average price so I can know like which animal should I get. So to change that, I go into the value section, I left click on it, and I'll see value field settings at the bottom. Okay, value field settings, and I click it. And when I go to the value field settings, this is important to note. In a pivot table, when I summarize, look at what types of summarization I have. So like, remember we talked about sum if, count if, average if. So I can sum if, count if, average if, max if, min if, product, which is multiply, count if, standard if. So these are the options I have. You see, there are no more other formulas or custom formulas. These are the only options I have in a pivot table. Kind of it's good and bad. It's like arithmetic. So what if I said to you, well, what if I want to run an if statement inside pivot table? Could I do that? Well, right now, no. Right now, no. So the answer is always yes for me. But right now in here, doesn't look like it, right? But you could if you knew how. Yeah. But just so you know, these are the options of doing the math on the summary. And then the formatting part, it happens structurally for the entire pivot table, is over here on the number format. So if I click this, I can format my results to whatever I want. Let's say I want currency, yeah, with no decimal places. Then when I come back to here, I don't want sum, I want average. I'll say okay. Yeah. So the average price, so let me make this a little bit bigger. The average price for the apes, at a specific place is that. And maybe I say, no, but I also need to know like which pet shop. I can throw this at the top like this, or I can throw this on the side like this, depending on which summarizes better for you. Yes. So I can say, oh, okay, maybe animal in the front, then I care about the shops afterwards. So this starts to help me analyze the data in a really quick way. And I say, well, how many? This is 4,000. That's one pet, one ape is $4,000. Well, I can say, hey, like, can I count instead of price? I want to instead of averaging and summing, I want to count how many apes or how many cats these sums are. So I can throw this in here like this. And right now it says sum of price, right? As I did the first time. At the very beginning, every time you throw a number in here, it will always default to a sum. I can left click on it, value field settings, and go to count. And I can say like, how many? Oh, okay. So there are 8 apes available for me. at Ben's. So you can see like here are how many pets, and these are the average prices, right? So I begin to see a lot more, and I can say like, like out of all these ones, could I see more information? Yes, you could see more information. We'll go into that a little bit on the next step here, but you would have to say, well, like who. So what I'm trying to say is this. Right now it shows 8. So there are 8 pets. Great. But like I want to know like which store has, so out of all the animals, so in the total I have 108 animals. And which store holds which percentages of the apes, which percentages of the cats, which percentages of the dog, which percent. So I want to know like percentage. Could I do that? Of course. How do I do it? You throw the price back in here again, and again, it will show you some. Yeah? But don't just show it like this. But this time, I'm going to value field settings. I'll choose to account. Now, if I leave it as sum, I could, but then I'm trying to see what is the percentage of the animals that each shop holds. So I go to count, but this time, I don't just stay here. I go to the show value as. This is important. Show value as means right now I'm just showing you a count. But I can, instead of showing you that count, I can say, hey, I can show you the count of the percentage total, grand total, or the percentage of the column total. Yeah. So I can say, hey, the grand total. So the grand total, let me just check down here. The grand total is this down here. I'll say, okay, you know what? I'll change this to a count. And then you see the count is 118. That's fine. I'll go back again. And I'll say, hey, show me the percentage of the grand total. I press OK. And now this time what you see is you see the 8 out of 118, the percentages of everything. So all it was a drag and drop and adjusting the calculation units to maybe a percentage, maybe a different way of calculation. But I can do that quite easily just by dragging the same thing into the value sections multiple times and adjusting the units of calculations as I go. So this is how pivot table becomes really, really cool and useful more and more and more. Now, I'm going to drag these off the screen for now just to keep it really simple. And when you see like these totals here, and you're like, I don't like those. They're really clustered up. I can't really see properly. Quick way to remove it is just go up above that column, animal, double click, and hit none, so no subtotals, and those subtotals will be removed. So it's a little bit cleaner, easier for you to see. Yes? Perfect. So the last thing I'm going to do in this particular example before I let you practice is, I'm just going to check, is filtering. Okay? Is filtering. And you know that when I talk about filtering, I'm not just talking about filtering these, even though we will do that as well. But I'm talking about like throwing in a slicer. So for example, if I click on this pivot table, I go up to pivot table analyze. I can go to insert slicer. Okay. And I can say like, hey, give me the breed. And let me see. Yeah, the animal and the pet shop as well. So I throw that there all together, and you can see, okay, this is here, and I have this, and these are filtered. Remember, they're exactly the same as a regular filter, but they're visual. So then I can go like this and just shrink it up a little bit. And sorry, my setup is not the most beautiful, but I can put them on the side, and I can say, hey, I'm looking for a dog. Perfect. These are all the dogs available. There are the average prices right here. And this is the count of price, but what it's actually doing, the count of price is just saying count of that column. So how many records? So there are 13 animals here, and the total is 610. And you can pick the breed and stuff like that. We've done this in the past, okay? So if I say, oh, well, which pets add up to these amounts? So any of these numbers that you see here are not just a formula. They're actually a subset. Oh, subset. What do you mean? Well, remember a pivot table is picking a column and filtering by something and filtering by something else to create a smaller and isolated set of data. So from your original data, as you filter and filter and filter, aren't you drilling down or narrowing down a subset of information from the original? So meaning this here or this here, if I double click on it, you can see here's the subset of the filter. That is of that pet shop, of that animal. If I just highlight all these, see how it says 14? Well, remember it's 14 means, hey, if I were to count how many records, so a record is one row, there are 14 rows, means there are 14 animals, and the average price is this column. Remember, average if is the average if, which is 1519.7. So if I go back to my thing, 1519, see the rounding? So it goes up to that. So every single one of these is a subset of information that is being filtered first and then calculated. So you can always double click to bring back that subset to double check your information. Okay, so slicers, pretty straightforward to add in like yesterday, except this time we're adding it for the pivot table instead of just the table. Okay, the last thing I will talk about here in terms of, I'm just going to clear everything, in terms of filtering, which is the point we're talking about, is, well, how do I filter like, I want to filter like the largest at the top and the lowest at the bottom. So I go here, I go, okay, data, grayed out. That's not good. Then I go, oh, right, it's a right click. And then, I can say sort, largest to smallest. I can sort. Can I filter with a filter? But there's no filter, nothing to click. You're right. You're right. Can I show you something that totally blew my mind a couple of years ago? If you like the clickable, this is what you do on the pivot table. Okay. Remember the Control Shift L. If you place your mouse one cell right beside the pivot table, like me. Okay. Watch this. Control Shift L. Oh, it added up here. Okay, it added up here. No, that's not what I want. Control Shift L. So I'll say, okay, I'm over here. I'll go over here. Control Shift L. So as you go in here, I can filter. I can see like, hey, number filter. So what you're looking at is this entire column. Typically, this filter is actually straight up in here. But in this example right now, I'm showing you it's above it. So I can say, okay, can you show me like the largest at the top? Largest at the top. And so it didn't quite do what I wanted to do. So let me try it. Is the largest at the top? Let me see if I can remove one of these to help the process. But when you throw that in, you actually usually will get a filter straight up in here. So let me just throw that one out. So I took out all my value section to redo the filter. So this guy here, sum of price, and it was average of price, which is what I had. Okay. And then if I go back here, Control Shift L one more time. Typically, if I'm right beside it, it should apply the filter straight onto the pivot table. Let me see if I can take off. Go here. I could say largest to smallest. This is not quite working for me. But if you wanted to make it say that, the manual way to do it is definitely go in the column and you can say sort largest to smallest, and it will try to sort. It'll go from the largest to smallest. In this case, it still didn't do it. I think I might be on a filter. Let me check. No, I'm not. But again, this is not quite working the way I expected. Why? Well, because it's actually filtering not for this. It's filtering this column here. It's filtering for this column here. So pivot table, sometimes you'll find it difficult to filter for things because it doesn't have the typical data filter available to it. You might have to right click to sort for things in a particular column, or you might have to use this method I'm trying to show you is Control Shift L to add in the filter for the entire pivot table. And when it's working properly, the filters will actually go across this pivot table so that you can filter for information in that pivot table. I'm going to take a pause here. I'm going to delete all my guys here. And I'm going to say to you, hey, can can you do a pivot table for me, seeing what you have seen already? I'll take out all mine. You make a new pivot table this time with a lot more information this time, and do some kind of analysis like I did, what I showed you. And then when you're ready, put your hands up again. Give it a try. A pivot table with a different way of calculation, with a slicer. Give that a try. Remember, as you're filtering, drag and dropping, that it is filtering and calculating, and filtering and calculating, and filtering and calculating. As you're making your pivot table, I'm going to make something of my own as well, okay? And when you're done playing around, feel free to put your hand up, okay? This is a lot more that I've gave you in the last example, so take your time. Perfect, Helena, thank you. When you start to use dates in here, perfect, Donna, thank you. As you use dates in here in pivot tables, you will start to see weird things like, hey, there's a quarter, there's a year. Why is it like this? Yeah. And the most important thing is not that. The what you see, that can be adjusted. But the most important thing is if you have a column in the table that is mixed dates with numbers, some dates are in number form, some dates are in text, what you're going to have is a lot of problems in pivot tables. A lot of problems. Okay. Got 5 hands up. Awesome. Yeah. So keep your hands up if you're done, you're ready to move, or else I'll give you a couple more minutes. The more you play in it, the more hopefully you'll like it, that it's very easy, user-friendly. All right, I got 7 hands up. Awesome. So if you can remove all the rows and the values that you have, and then can you put all these back that you see on the screen back with me? So your pivot table that you have, that's remove all those from the sandbox, from your box, and put adoption availability in your rows, and animal, and then in values, put average of price. Average of price, okay?
When I tried to add the adoption availability, it exploded into years, quarters, and months.
Totally, totally. And that's okay. That's okay. So if you I'll try to add it again. It will definitely explode, and that's normal, okay? So if you put it in, it'll look like crazy like this. Don't worry. Don't worry. So this is what you do, okay? So once you add it in, you're like, "Oh my gosh, what's all this?" Just after you didn't have all this. Why did it do that, right? So it actually starts to help you help you make groupings, which you may or may not like. So all you do is after you have what I have in there, just click one cell below the title of the first like I7. So the year, I'm clicking there right now, okay? And then what you do is if you go up to the pivot table analyze tools, okay? And then you'll see a section called group. Do you see that? Just click on group and everything will disappear and you'll just have the date. Okay? If you're okay, put your hands down. If you have the same screen as me, put your hands down. Or else I'll wait for you, okay? Armand and Alejandro. So if you have the same as me, put your hand down. Otherwise, I'll wait for you. Okay, so what this means is these grouping can be created or it's automatically created for you. So I ungrouped everything. It is very, very important where you click on the pivot table before you action something. Because if you click on the wrong place at the wrong time and you go try to use certain tools, those tools will be grayed out. So you need to make sure you're on the right tool before you select any of the ribbon products. So I click again on the date, adoption availability. I go up to top, pivot table and analyze. I go to group selection and notice that it has generated some kind of grouping, right? It says months right now. But what if no, but it's not showing months. It's showing the whole date. What if I say, no, I want like per quarter and no months, just per quarter. So then in that case, what you'll see is calculating right now. You'll see Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, and Q1 being, of course, January, February, March, and then every 3 months and every 3 months. So I no, that's not what I want. I just want year and month. Okay, then you just go back and you say, no, I don't want quarters. I want year and month. I press OK. So this is automatically generated for you. Okay, so I can, these totals, I don't like it. I can say you, none, you, none. And so now I have the year, the month, and the animal. And I can say, oh, this is really hard to read. Can I put the animal somewhere else? Yes, it may or may not help you, may look better or worse, depends. So I can move it to the column section. I can say, okay, in January, these are the pets available for me for adoption. And so like of this particular year. And then if I want to adopt in the January of the following year, well, I can see like, okay, then, these certain animals are available to me. So you can see that as it gets bigger, it's getting to the information, but remember it's filtering, and then averaging. So it might not be very easy to show someone, let's say, because the data gets really, really big as you go. So date-wise, as long as the date is entered properly as a number in your array, in your range, and in your data, then you're not gonna have problems. But if one date is entered incorrectly in the data section, you will have a mess. When you come in here, you will not be able to do any of these grouping because it doesn't know how to segregate your data set. Any questions here? I don't want to go into our break too much, but it's
Sorry,
yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
So when I have animals under the rows,
Yes.
it looks completely different from yours. I can't remember how to
right now?
format it. Like the header is 2019, underneath that is Jan, and underneath that is ape and dog in one column instead
yes.
of
Don't
three.
worry. That's just the layout. So right now, right now, the best way to align is in the design section.
Oh,
In the
okay.
design section, you have a report layout. And then depending on which layout you pick, compact, you're probably on the compact right now, or outline or tabular. If you play with that, you'll end up with the same as mine.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that worked. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so enough said. I hope this is a good intro into pivot table. It's not too hard, but there's a lot of cool things that you can do in here very, very easily. The pro is easy to use. Con is, well, I can only calculate those calculations that you saw, sum, average, max, min. What about if statement? What about other things I want to calculate? I can't really do it because it's not really available, right? So let's take a break. And when we come back, I'm going to show you more of like That's not quite true. You can do a lot of that. Depends on if you know how or not. Okay. So if we're all okay, let's take a 10-minute break. So 11:09 right now. We'll come back at 11:20. 11:20 is when we'll start again. Okay. So everybody, let's take a break. All right. So we're just gonna pick up again. If you're ready to go, just put up your hand, okay? Perfect. I got 5 hands so far. We'll give a couple more seconds for everyone to get back. So if you're ready to go, put up your hand. Again, if you're ready to go, put up your hand, okay? Got 5 hands so far, so hopefully we didn't lose any people. 6 hand. One more hand and we'll get going. One more hand up. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Okay, hands down. All right, we're gonna move on to Power Query, which is a really, really awesome tool if you haven't used it yet. But I'm just gonna leave one comment with pivot tables before we move on from it. Pivot tables are really easy to use, but the most important part is what is it sourced with? So if you source from a table, great, then you've got you understand this whole course. If you don't source from a table and you source from address, remember the same problem as yesterday as a formula. If you're sourcing from an address, when you go and update or refresh, so let me just show you what I mean. When you get to an exercise like this, you finish all this. Well, what happens if someone goes to the data and adds one more row at the bottom? Well, if you have a table, then you don't worry about that because when you hit data, refresh all, or just in the pivot table, right click, refresh, the new data that's been added will automatically be added into here if you source to a table or a named range. If you don't, then actually, if you source to a name range, you have to update name range as well. So you should source to a table. If you don't source to a table, what will happen is that one extra new one that you added at the bottom will not be included in here until you update the address or until you update this particular, let me show you, this particular address here. See how mine is a data, so I don't care about addresses. But if yours happens to be an address, like row 1 to 10, then you're going to have to every single time, oh, from 10 to 11, or from 11 to 12, and so on and so forth. So you should never really make a pivot table sourcing to anything other than a table. Okay, so hopefully that's clear to you. We're going to move now to Power Query. And it's really, really interesting. I'm going to use 2 files to talk about this topic as a start, okay? So number 9, this pivot table reference guide, we'll keep it open. Why? I'll show you in a second. And then the second file I want you to keep open is the 02, I think yesterday, Excel table. Remember this one that we were like deleting rows, deleting columns, filtering, and we even ran like a fill down of the blanks with the formula. So all of this cleaning up work, can be automated. You don't need to program, you don't need to write anything. All you have to know is how to use Power Query. Okay, what do you mean? I'll give you a case here. So for instance, earlier in the 09 pivot table reference guide, right? So in this guide here, I showed you like, hey, the original data, it was really like messed up. Like they're in the wrong column. Yeah, the data's right, but like they're in the wrong column. So typically if Jason didn't provide this consolidated data, it would probably take me like, I don't know, 5-10 minutes to copy and paste and move things. Yes? So before I continue, Donna, your hand is up. Are you doing okay? Okay, perfect. All right. So if I have things that are not arranged in the proper way, I have to cut and paste and put things together. Well, this is exactly the cleanup process that can be automated. Well, in what sense? Look, if you click on your pivot table reference guide worksheet right now on the original data, okay? When you click on the first, so under Ian's pets on budget, you probably don't have a table right now, but can you please turn it into a table? So like highlight everything in here, Control T, make it a table, and then name it whatever you want. In my case, I will change mine to Ian. Yeah. And then the same with Ben's and Liza's and Stuart's. Turn them all into tables. So if they're not tables, turn them into tables. Name them accordingly, however you like. So this is Ben's, And then Liza's, I'll change Liza's into a table as well. And I'll name that table Liza. And remember what I said to you, you can name this T_Liza if you like to have best practice. Steward, the same. Steward. Okay, so I have 4 different pet stores. If you have done the table creation and you've done everything I just said, please put your hand up. Perfect. 3 hands. Awesome. Good. 4 hands, Alejandro. Thank you. So all we're doing right now is with the original data tab, create 4 tables, naming them according to the name at the top, like Ian, Ben, Liza, and Stuart. Okay, I got 5 hands up. Making a table, Helena. Thank you. So 6 hands, 7 hands. Okay, I think we're ready to go here. So, excuse me. As you make these tables, it's really easy to make. Now, remember, making a table, piece of cake. Using them is an art, okay? So what do I mean by that? Well, first, these tables are not exactly the same. They need to be rearranged to the right places before I can use them. So where can I go to clean up? Well, we're talking about Power Query, so let's get into it. So if you go up to the data section here, you will see on the left-hand side, get data, and the grouping is called get and transform data. This tool has been in Excel for a long time, like I'm talking like 15, 20 years, long time. But very few people actually use it, maybe because it's not user-friendly, things like that. They've gone to kind of give it a new packaging to make it more user-friendly. I don't know if it's out there yet, but I'm gonna try, give my best to give it a go here, okay? If you click the Get Data tab, okay, you'll see at the bottom here something called Launch Power Query Editor. Launch Power Query Editor. And it sounds like all the terminology is kind of new. That's where the Power Query is. But let me show you how to use it right from the get-go before we use it, okay? Because it's kind of easy, but not really once you get into it. So on the first table that I'm on, Ian's table, I click one cell on Ian's table, okay? And you can put all your hands down. So I'm on Ian's table. I go up to data, and you can see I can get this data from a TXT, a CSV, a website, a table /range, or if I went into get data from file, from Excel files, CSV, XML, JSON, PDF, from a folder. There's many different, from database. I can link, this is kind of like an ETL. Like you can link source information from various places into Excel to do cleanup before you can analyze, which is very typical of what we do, right? So in this particular case, however, we've already have tables created. So what we can do is we can click on one cell under Ian and we go to data from table /range. And I'm just gonna, once I have it open, I'll share the screen with you, but it's showing up here on my second screen. So do you see this? This is what happens when you open Power Query Editor. But just now, if we went straight to open it just now, we would have nothing inside. But because we've brought in the table we've created, Ian's table in here, we see Ian's data in here. Now, remember what I said to you, Power Query and Power Pivots have limitless rows. Yeah, limitless rows. So far I have this many. But what's important to note is the following. These are arranged in this particular way. And then at the very top, note this, okay? This is super important. This is basically access. Is that at the top, you can dictate what data type you want to format them or store, not just format them, but store them permanently as for the analysis. So for example, if I click this ABC, you will see like these are the data types that I can permanently format everything in that column to. So this one's animal, ABC, no problem with that. Breed, no problem with ABC. 1, 2, 3. Whenever you see an ABC and 1, 2, 3, what that means is it's a general. So it's undecided. So you have to say what you want to force that to be. And the cool thing with Power Query, just to make it really simple, is this. I don't know how many of you use PowerPoint. When you use PowerPoint, you animate for sometimes, right? So you animate letters to come in from the left or to disappear, things like that. as you animate on the right-hand side, about this area here, you will see the different animations, you'll see the timing, you'll see things like that. Power Query Editor is exactly like that. There's not exactly an undo in Power Query Editor, but not to worry. Everything that you see right now is virtual and it's away from your data set. So this is like kind of like your sandbox. And everything that I ask it to do, it will list all the actions that it does on the under the applied steps. So if you want to undo something, all you simply do is just left click on whatever object, the X, and it removes back to the previous step. So it's kind of an undo. And it lists all the steps for here for you that it will use to clean up the data. If the same data set comes like this, it will do exactly the same thing following the steps that you have applied here. Okay. So ABC is good. ABC is good. 1, 2, 3 is good. Well, is it good? Yeah, it's okay. I'm just thinking, should I have a whole number? Well, 1, 2, 3 is whole number, so I'm okay. Name is good. Price, why don't we change that to a currency? And are you sure you want to convert it? Yes, replace current. So now you can see currency, adoption availability. See, there's a time, but there's no time. Why is it doing that? So because it's showing you date and time, I can just say date. And then yes, replace current. Okay, so all that is being done, but this is only Ian's table. I still need to bring in the other 3 tables before I can do more, right? So what I can do is I have to go get the other tables. How do I do that? This is the trickiest part of Power Query. Okay, so pay attention here. If you want to exit Power Query, everything that you have done is here. You can save it by going to file and close and load. But the important thing is you don't just save it by you see this close and load. It's pretty much the same thing. So, but what you need to pay attention to is this. The first time you come into Power Query, you will have the option of close and load too. Only the first time. The next time you come into Power Query, and you'll see this, close and load to will be grayed out. So you can't access that the second time from here. You'll have to access it from somewhere else. So for the first time, please remember, don't just close and load. Close and load to. And you'll see it come back on your screen. It looks like this. Very similar to the pivot table. Yes? Very similar to the pivot table. Now it's asking you, okay, I have your data. Do you want me to display your data, this table? Well, it's already here, so no. Do you want me to pivot it? Oh, no, not right now. Not right now. So typically what you want to do is you want to create a connection. What does that mean? That means you want to bring this into Power Query as a connection. The next time when this table updates, through the connection, it will pull in the new information. So just create a connection. Don't store it anywhere in the virtual either. And then again, at the bottom, you see, add this data to the data model. Again, it's reminding you, do you want me to make a database of this? Yes or no? And I'm saying no for now still. I press OK. And now you'll see on the on the right-hand side, you'll see a Ian table connected to Power Query. And similarly, if you can please go ahead and bring in Ben's and Liza's and Stewart's into the Power Queries. And how? I'll show you one more time. I click on Ben's table. I go to data. I go to from table / range. And is there a faster way than this? Yes, for sure. But the way that I've arranged my data on the sheet, no, there isn't at the moment. Okay. So again, I come in here, I see Ian, I see Ben. But remember, before you go and get the next table, when you go to file, you see how you can close and load to? Again, if it's the first time for each of the table you come in, you'll see this. That's okay. But when you come back later, you will see this grayed out at some point on the second or your last attempt. So make sure close and load to always, create a connection only, and do the same thing with the leftover Liza and Stewart's table as well, please. And when you have them in the Power Query, please give me a hand up once you're there, okay? I'll do the same thing. Okay, I got Ori's hand up. Awesome. I hope that means you're done. Or if you have a question, feel free to shout out.
No, just done.
Awesome. Perfect. So then what you'll see on your screen is exactly the same as mine. Yeah. 4 tables in the Power Query.
Yes.
And I'll just wait for everyone to finish before we continue. Perfect. Stephen is done as well. Awesome. So Power Query is really where you can massage your information. Sometimes you can even use Pivot if you want from here. But Power Query, usually the end result is a cleaned up data ready for Power Pivot or ready for a pivot table or ready for a report if you want. Okay. But it's automatic
I'm
once you
getting
have set it up.
an error message. I don't know if it's something I'm doing, but it says this workbook has a Power Pivot data model created using a previous version of the Power Pivot add-in. You'll need to upgrade this data model with Power Pivot for Microsoft Excel 2016.
Ah, okay.
So I don't know, is that just like my version of Excel that's not
It could be,
compatible?
it could be, but yeah, so you do need a Microsoft 365 for this to work properly, but it also sounds like to me maybe that file's been worked on a couple times. So what I would recommend for that case is if you can just open up a blank Excel spreadsheet and just kind of take let me just minimize this for a second. Take the information that you want, like the
Yeah.
tables, and put it onto a brand new Excel spreadsheet.
Okay.
And then close off the pivot table 09 reference that we have right now, just in case it's like already worked on.
Okay.
And then I'll
I'll
wait.
try that.
Yeah, give that a try. Hopefully that will get rid of the problem. So if you've already created a data model, it's going to try to update. So that's the thing.
Okay.
Okay, I see 5 hands up, and I know it's going to take you a little bit of time to do that. So try your best to load up the 4 tables onto the new sheet and then bringing them into Power Query. Okay. And don't worry, you still have time. As I do this next step, you'll be able to kind of catch up. So the next step is the following. So I have all these tables brought in. Wonderful. But remember, the positions of these are kind of off, right? So for example, animal, breed, age, name, price, adoption. That looks okay. Next one, animal, breed, name, age, price. Oh, the adoption availability. Isn't that the last? So when you're in Power Query, all I do is I click and I drag and I say, you go to the end. So you don't have to like copy and paste. You just drag and drop, and you can anything you like or you don't like, you can just delete if you wanted to. You can do all kinds of stuff very easily. Okay.
How do you
All on
get back into that view that you're in? Because mine's just showing a list that it's connection only.
okay. Connection only. That's okay. So do you have the Power Query editor open like mine or no?
No.
No. Okay. Let me show you how to get back in. Okay. So
Okay.
to get back in there, let me just minimize mine. On your Excel sheet, if you go to data, okay, you go to get data, the very left-hand side, and you go down, it will say launch Power Query Editor. Just open that up and you'll end up in the same place as me.
Yes, thank you.
No problem. Okay, so what I'm doing right now is I'm just rearranging the columns to make sure that they're lining up before I consolidate them. Okay. Oh, I have just checking the chat. It worked. Okay, good. Make sure no one's outside. Okay, so the column of the first one looks good. So as I click through each table, they should be the same. Then I go look at the next one. I go, okay, are they the same? Let me just check. Animal, breed, age, name, price, adoption. So Liza's animal, breed, age, name, price, adoption. Looks good. Steward, animal, breed, age. Where's the name? The name was not there. The name is after age. So I go, okay, the name is after age right there. So I just drag and drop and I move things around. So does that look a little bit better? Let's see. Animal, breed, age, name. Animal, breed, age, name. Price, adoption. So now everything looks okay. So you can see that as I'm doing this, you see these reorder columns. So what it's doing is it's doing all that work for me permanently every single time. If I have more information added, it will automatically follow these steps, and it doesn't matter the length of the rows, if it's more or less. It will still follow the same steps to update or clean up my information, which is kind of good. It's a structural way of cleaning, yes? Then I check, okay, I said like, the data type is very important. So, hey, remember I changed the price to a dollar value and adoption to just the date. So I have to make sure that that's the same. So this price is currency on that one. Do I have to do this right now manual like this? Yes, right now I do, but as a whole, once I have arranged all the columns, I could have just consolidated, or do you remember VStack, the formula? We can do the same thing in here, except we don't even need the formula, which I'll show you in a second, and then change the data type, which will be a better way of doing this systematically. Okay, so just for now, for the sake of the process, I'll just do the same thing on all four, just so they're the same. Replace current and date, and replace current. And then last but not least, this was currency, and this is date, which is wonderful. I don't know if you note something that's kind of weird looking. The above, you see the FX, you see how it says table dot transform column. Oh my gosh, what the heck is all that? So what's happening in Power Query that's been not so user friendly in the past is that it's actually writing a line of code for you. It's kind of like macros, or kind of like Google Translate. Every single action that I'm doing in here is translated into a language called M code. And you're like, oh my gosh, another language, M code. You know what M code stands for? M code stands for mashup code. All it is code that helps you to clean up or mash together your data so that it remembers by some computer language what to do the next time. But you don't have to do anything. You can just see that it's doing something at the top, writing it for you without you doing anything at all. Okay, so I've done all that. Wonderful. I'm on the last step here of Steward. And so what I'm going to do right now is, remember VStack? Remember VStack? So I'm going to do VStack, but without VStack. So I'm going to formulate without formulating. How do I do that? Well, I go to Home. And at the very top, let me move my editor down a little bit and expand this out. Under Home, on the middle section where it says combine, you'll see a merge and you see a append. Now, if you're an Access guy or a database guy, you look at this, you're like, this is the same as Access. I agree. But if you're not a database person or a relationship database person, you look at this, you're like, what does that even mean? Well, append means to add tables together, much like VStack. And merge means you're going to overlap tables. Don't worry, we'll get to this a little bit later. But merge is kind of like a VLOOKUP, but without VLOOKUP. What? Yeah, so you could do exactly the same results as a VLOOKUP just by merging. We'll show that a little bit later. So I go to append, and I click the drop down append queries, and I append query as new, because I don't have any appends right now. So I click that. And give it a second, and you'll see concatenate rows from you see there's 2 tables, but we have 4 tables, don't we? So that's 3 or more tables. So I click 3 or more tables. You see how right now I'm on Steward. So Steward is already ready to go with appending, like adding them together. Yeah, but not Ian's. Ben's is not there, and Liza's is not there. So I click Ian, and I shift, and I click Liza. So all these ones, and I click add. So all of them will be together, like so. Yes, and I press OK. And so now you'll see one table called the append table, which has all of the information of the 4 tables all allocated together. Okay, now I don't have to output this if I don't want to. I don't have to output this, meaning this table here can remain in Power Query until I need it to go somewhere if I wanted to, or I can just leave as is and I will connect it to later. Or if I want to output the pivot table, I could. So the final step is the following. I go to File, I go to close and load to. And I have to say to where, right? To where. So I'll say to a new worksheet, a table is going to be loaded. Okay. But I don't want to pivot the table. I don't want just a consolidated table. I want a pivot table. So I can say, from that query of consolidated table already, can you just create for me a pivot table straight up? And yes, I can do that. On a new sheet, yes, I can do that. So I say, okay, show me. And this that you see here is not an issue of this is the same question you brought up earlier. So this is not an issue of like the wrong version of Excel. This is yes, I've done this a couple times already on this worksheet. So it's having trouble saying, well, which model do you want to use? Okay, so I will show that in a second here. So Stuart's download failed. So let me just see why Stuart's download failed. There are no, so as you go to this query and connection section, just so you know, if you don't see this, if you go to data and you click on the first one that says queries and connections, this guy right here, there are no, see how it says, so when you hover over it, you don't have to click it. See how it says there are no connections for this query? It's because we did table Ian, Ben, and Liza, but on the Stuart one, we didn't follow through with the load and close to and connection only. So it has no connections like the previous ones. So I can say, okay, Stuart, load to a connection only. So the same as the other. I press OK. Now it's loading the data. Hopefully, we'll wait, give it a second to load. And we can go back to reload the append to make sure that it works. So if I go back to data, get data, and I go to Power Query Editor to open it up. And I'll go to the append, okay? And I'll go to File. See how close and load to is grayed out, like I was telling you? So now I only have the option of close and load, which means I can't load to a pivot table. I can't load to a connection. I can't load to any of that stuff. So where can I go? I can close and load, which means just saves. But when I go into the data, queries and connections, I'll refresh all just to see if that Stuart one will update. It's not updating. So the append guy, this guy right here, I can get back to the close and load to again, only through this step. So I go hover over append one, and then you see how append one is appearing. And at the bottom here, the data source is not loading, but there's a ... right here. You see a ... If you click on the ... you'll be able to load to again. Whereas previously, if you go back to the regular Power Query Editor, this load to is erased, gone. So I'll say load to. I'll say, just give me a connection. I'll say, okay. I see my problem. I don't know if you saw, but my problem is the following. I hover over this, load to, create a connection, don't add to the data model. And same with this. Stuart, let me just hover over Stuart, ... load to, don't add to the data model, just a connection. Okay, so now I have no other issues. They're all connected. The append is here. But hey, Jason, you said you were going to show us the results. Yes, that requires that I go back to append one of the queries and connections, ... load to. And I can say, hey, can you just load out the table for me just so I can see the results? Sure. So I'll say table. I'll press OK. And give it a second. Here is the output of what you already did through the append, right? Through the append. But notice something here. I don't have, for example, the shops like Ian and Ben and Liza and Stuart, right? Because when I was importing them or bringing them into Power Query, I didn't have. So if you look here, if I go back to data, get data, launch Power Query Editor, in the data itself, there were no column that specifically said, oh, Ian or Liza's or Ben's. They were just the same column, same 6 columns with no additional information. Okay. So I didn't have anything other than that. And then of course, in the append, I don't have additional data other than that either. Okay. However, uh, because of all that, this is all I have, but it's okay. Let's work with what we have here. Let's work with what we have here. And so if I wanted to, output a pivot table, for example, I can load to and say pivot table, but there's actually a button called pivot table in here. Let me just find it for you. View, no. I think it's under home. Where is the pivot table? Oh, not there. Usually it's under home, but I don't see it. Manage. I don't see it. That's okay. I'll put it from the load too, okay? So I'll close and load to save everything. And I will say, hey, this guy ... load to, and I'll say a pivot chart, this time on an existing sheet. So this right here, this guy right here, I click enter. So I want a pivot table report with this data set, not connected to data model. I press OK. Query is connected to a table in your loading query. Pivot table will delete the table. Do you want it? Yes. Okay, so in here now have the pivot table as you saw previously, and I can say, hey, animal that we had in the pivot table, and then price. And the use of this is exactly the same as before where we were running pivot tables. The only part that's a little bit tricky in here is the formatting. You see the formatting here? It's not the formatting of what I had in the consolidation, which was, do you remember, there was all in currencies. Because it goes through a Power Query and it has to keep accuracy, it doesn't keep the original formatting. So you have to reformat this to say, hey, I want that to be in the format of currency, no decimal places. Okay, and press OK to make it back into its own formatting. Okay, so appending, putting data together is a lot more systematic like this. So now let's wrap up by one more thing, and then that way we can practice. So if I go back, so you see like a blah, blah, blah. If I go back to the original data and I add one more line to Ian's pets, and I'll say animal is going to be a chicken, and the breed is going to be spicy, and age 3, and name is Jason, and is $100. And the adoption available today, November 29th, 2024. Right? So just so you know, in my append 1 right now, I don't have a chicken, right? But all I have to do to update that, in pivot table, I just right click and I refresh, right? So as I refresh, see how it automatically updates in the table, it automatically updates in the query, it automatically updates in the result. There's the chicken, here's Jason Spicy. So as you do this systematically, as you have new data downloaded, and it is in the table form, and the connection is made, when the table grows, you don't care because the address is no longer relevant. All you care about is how will the tables be connected? How will the table be cleaned up? How will the tables be added together? And how do you want to output it? And you can do this systematically. Literally, the next time you get the same file, all you have to do is data, refresh all, and everything refreshes. It is a beautiful world. However, as you're playing with Power Query in the beginning, as you see, if you didn't know how to troubleshoot some of the issues here, you'll run into like, oh, I don't know what to do. And there's not a lot of know-how or Q&A online. Especially on YouTube, it's very limited. So you will tend to have to play around a little bit. But typically the problems are, how do I get that back, that ... How do I make sure it doesn't have an error loading? Well, make sure it's not loading to a data model, like for this particular case. Those are the typical issues that you'll see in the beginning of Power Query. Donna, you have your hand up. Is everything okay? Perfect. So The first one is kind of a rearrange and rearrange the data and then add a couple there. So if you don't mind, could you do something for me? I'm gonna ask you to open up 02 Excel table. Remember this guy here that was really annoying yesterday? We don't have to redo this, okay? We don't have to redo this. But what I want you to do is the following, okay? I want you to go to the convert to Excel table here, where you have this first, civil engineering, mechanical engineering, project management. Remember, we had to clean up extra. So you know what? Today, what we're gonna do is we're gonna make these into tables, much like what we did previous with the animal shops. Mechanical engineering, so 3 tables, table, table, table. And then I want you to use Power Query, to clean up the data before you append the 3 tables together, much like we did. The only difference between what you saw previous to what this is here is that when you run Power Query, so let me just show you what I mean. When you run Power Query, you will see these empty nulls like here. There will be a button. I'll do it with you so you can see it later on. There will be a button here that says remove null or remove blanks. And if you don't see that, you can literally in Power Query click the empty columns and right click to say remove column. You can do that as well. But if you do that, that means the position of the column has to be the same on H and L every single time. Yeah? So give it a practice. I want you to try, this is a little bit harder challenge. I haven't shown you this step by step yet. So I want you to make these 3 into tables, bring them into Power Query, clean it up, and spit it out to a new sheet that has all 3 tables consolidated as one. Give it a try. If you are struggling, I'm also going to be doing this on the screen without talking, but I'll be doing the same thing, okay? Remember to on-merge everything. So once you get to the same 3 tables and you brought it into Power Query, if you can just put your hand up so I can address a couple of things. Perfect. Okay, I got 3 hands up. I'm just gonna wait for a couple more hands before I show you a few more tricks in Power Query. There's so many cool features that you can do in Power Query that 1 hour is not going to be enough to cover, but hopefully I can show you open a few more cans. Okay, 5 hands up so far. 2 more and we'll get going. Perfect. If you've unmerged before you made a table, it should be pretty easy. But if you didn't unmerge, it might give you some trouble. Okay, perfect. There's 7 hands. Okay, so right now I'm in Power Query Editor. I'll just make this a little bit bigger. And I'm on the T_civil. Okay. And I can consolidate at this point if I wanted to. But you can see like they're pretty much the same issues here. Okay. But you can see like, hey, there's nulls. Remember yesterday it was so difficult to like fill down. It has to be like the right data type, stuff like that. So right now, if I'm on the civil engineering, the first column here, you see all these that say null. I can actually go to, I believe it's transform right here. And in the middle section where it says fill, you can replace value or you can fill up or fill down. So if I fill down, all the civil engineering automatically becomes filled. So nothing required. All you have to do is select the column and fill. Same with this. So if you understand what I said, just click on the column you want to fill down. You have blanks here, which is called null. Transform and fill down. And it will automatically fill down with information. Same with the last one. Fill, transform, fill down. Okay, then you still have a lot of nulls here. That's kind of annoying. Yes, like remember you had a row here that was like the subtitle that was made for formatting purposes. So it was really, really annoying. You don't really like it. So I can do 2 things as a try. So nulls in general can be removed automatically. So I can go to home and I can say keep rows or rows remove. You see how there's like remove duplicate, remove blank rows, and then or remove. There's 2 of them here. Let me just be careful here. There's a remove columns, like literally saying delete the column, or keep rows. So I can say, hey, remove rows that are blank, and it's probably not going to remove this row here because there's information here, right? So I can say like this guy here, the column, for sure I want that removed. I can either go into home and remove column, or I believe I can just go here. I can right click and just remove. So it's gone. And so these nulls are still there. So I can say, hey, the rows so this guy here in the level, if I see nulls here, you see remove empties. So instead of clicking filtering off, you can filter on and off for certain filters as an automatic process. Or I can say just remove empties. You see how the nulls are all gone. So now that looks a little bit better. Yes. And so you do the same thing. So as a practice, please go ahead and clean up the other tables also. Remove them from any nulls that you see so that there are no such thing that's following around in there. So I'm going to say nulls. Remove empties, and the same with, oh, I think I forgot to remove the column here. Remove, and last but not least, same with here. Remove empties, remove empty columns. And I'm just going to give a quick look and see like everything else is looking okay. No, not really. See the last 2 columns here? So these are not looking very good yet. So I have these numbers here that are not converted yet. That's fine. So this one here, I don't really want it. I have more than 1 column though. I can highlight both of these and say right click, remove columns. And so now it's looking a little cleaner. Remember though, all these steps are not going to be repeated in the future. They're all recorded on the right-hand side. So you do this one time when you're setting up the project. Same with these. Right click, remove columns. Last but not least, project. Click, click, right click, remove columns. So now I have all three tables kind of cleaned up a little bit. So the last step that you know what I'm about to do is append. So go ahead and append. If you need my steps here, then you can follow me along right here. I'm going to go to Home, Append Queries. Three or more. I got the one over here on one side already. Bring the other two over. Press OK.
Sorry, you're going a little bit too fast, Jason.
Oh,
I'm still
okay, I'll
trying to
slow
clean up
down.
here.
Okay, I'll slow down. So what I did just now, just to back it up, is I went to Home, Append Queries. This is right here. I'll leave it on the screen. Append Query as new. I'll stay here on the screen until everyone's on the same page. And then when you go to that, a window will pop up, and then it will say like two sides. One side will have one table. You want to bring all the tables to the right-hand side by adding them, and then pressing OK following that.
Is there any way to undo if you make a mistake?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great question. So let's say like this, whatever you're doing, like let's say this, you want to undo. There's no undo button, but if you just hit the X, it removes the steps. So if you're saying, hey, this append is wrong, then all you have to do is right click and bye-bye. And that append, you want to delete it? Yes. Then it's gone. So if I were to redo it again, I would go again to Home, Append Query as new. So hopefully everyone's following me the second time around, hopefully. Three or more tables. I got the one side has this, but I want all three of them to go together. So Civil, Add, Mech, Add. So all three are together. Am I okay to press OK? I don't want to leave anybody. So this is the append action, is adding the three cleaned up table into one table. So you'll see another table pop up here called the append one. Okay with that? Awesome. So I press OK. So you see that all three tables are appended together, right? And see how it's much more systematic. And as I add more things in the future and I end up with the same cleanup problem, the same process in Power Query remembers what was happening, and it'll literally follow through the same steps in order to get to the same result here. So now the last step is, of course, show us the result. So remember in the beginning, you have the close and load to, but later you will not. So close and load to while you can, and wait. And you want to output to a table, that's fine. To a new worksheet, that's fine. But remember, don't add it to a data model yet. This gets complicated real quick. This is another can of worms, okay? So I'll press OK, and you'll see your table pop up right here, which you've cleaned up. Okay? Only difference is nothing's formatted, so you have to add the formatting to it after Power Query is worked on. Any questions here so far?
I think I did something wrong. I got all sorts of error messages. It wouldn't give me the append.
Okay. When you go to data right now on your Excel and you go to queries and connections, on the right hand, so if you click it, you'll see like the queries and connections that you have. Do you see some?
I'm not even on that. It's still in like the Power Query editor section.
Power Query. Okay, let me get back in there then. Hold on.
Yeah, it's showing a bunch of errors on T Civil project. T Mechanical is the only one that's showing like
it's showing up. Okay.
spreadsheet.
Okay. No worries. So when you go back to let's say T Civil, each of these tables here, just give it a look and see if there's any nulls still in there, any blanks in there.
Expression error.
Expression error, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that typically means something's, so if the tables don't match in some way, then you're gonna get an expression error. Means when they're trying to code what you're trying to do into a M code, it wasn't able to.
Okay.
Okay, so what I would say is don't get frustrated. It is a steep learning curve, absolutely. You will probably have to try this again from scratch just to make sure that everything aligns properly as you need before you append them together, or else when you append it, you're going to get lots of problems. Any columns that's not matching the other columns is going to give you an error it's going to try to add them together, and it's going to give you a lot of problems.
Okay.
Okay, so hang in there. You'll be able to get through, I'm sure, but just it takes a little bit of practice. Okay, so I'm just gonna close and load. So this is the result that we have. The last part that I want to show you in terms of append before we do something new with Power Query is the following. If I have a file, a folder in particular, so in my the Excel course files that I gave you earlier yesterday, there were 3 folders. There was like append data set, and there's like RFQ combined via Power Query. So if I open append data set, I just want to show you what's inside. Okay, I have the following 4 Excel spreadsheets. I'll open just one of them, just to show you. And they're all identical, okay? So it's just basically, let's say there's consolidated data that's been outputted that I download either from database or another department has worked on something. So you can see here I have category, vendor name, blah, 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 all this stuff, yeah? And so I have different sizes, I have all of them. You know, this is already a table, so you know what you typically we would go to data and we go to from data / range, but that's very tedious. What happens if I have like 100 files, like 100 tables? So I have to do this manually 100 times? That defeats the whole point of Power Query. No, you don't have to do that. So in those cases, when you have everything in a folder, you just again have to make sure the columns are arranged in the same column, like A is, or the first column has category, and so on and so forth. Make sure all the columns are kind of in the same. If not, you're going to have trouble when you try to add them together. But where you would go instead is not the from table / range. You would go to get data from file, from folder, okay? And then in there, you would select the folder that contains all of your Excel. So in my case, I'm on my desktop. I would select the Excel course files, yes, and in it has append data set. This is what I would open up, okay? So let me show you. I'm going to close everything and actually do it in the actual practice so you can see, okay? So Excel table, this is, okay, so I'm gonna close this guy, and I don't need this anymore. I'm not going to save any of it. I open up a new Excel file with nothing inside, just to make sure that there's no data model loaded or stuff like that, okay? And I'm going to close my pivot table reference guide as well. I'm not going to save any of it. And I'm going to go to my book 1 that is empty with nothing in it. Excuse me. Just get some water. I go to data. I go to from data, from file, from folder. And I know I'm talking really quickly, so I'll stop. So I open up a brand new Excel file with nothing in it. I have a bunch of files, Excel files with tables in it, sitting in a folder somewhere. Yeah. So I'm trying to access it. I'm trying to access it through Power Query to do some cleanup, to bring it into my spreadsheet for use. So I go to from file, from folder, and then I will look for my folder wherever you have downloaded your file, your folder to. And my folder is located on my desktop, so don't follow exactly my directory or my path here. I look for where you downloaded your append data set. And don't open up further, just literally just point at the folder and then click open. And then you'll see the following. You'll see like, hey, inside that folder has the following 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And each of them, of course, contains a table and many other things. So on your Excel spreadsheet, if you have table and many other things, well, you have to clean up and tell Power Query which ones to keep and which ones not to keep. So which we'll have to do in Transform, but follow me along here. So now from here, if I go down here, I have a combine. If I click the drop down, I have a combine and transform. So it means combine them, then clean up, or combine and load, nothing to clean up, or combine and load to, which can just go straight to the pivot table as you saw, or load, if you see, load to. So that's later on. So we don't use this load yet. Or we can say transform, but we're going to say combine and transform data. Okay, combine and transform data. So I'm going to say combine and transform data. So wait a little bit as it's establishing connection to that folder and to the files. Wait a little bit and see where it is here. This step is really important. It's not really intuitive. So please follow me along here. I have to access each of the files inside the folder, but I have to say which part of the file. So like, you know how, am I accessing the table? On the spreadsheet, it's really big. It could have a table and some. So do I only want to connect to the table? The answer is yes, but I have to indicate that. So in the sample file, first file, you see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's the one I'm on. So I'm going to click on EIC, the first file. Then I'm going to click on table. So you can see a sample of exactly what I'm connecting to in terms of that file in that folder. Then this is the part that's not intuitive. To bring each of the tables in, I still have to go to EDC and table. So you have to still go through these steps because I don't know exactly what's in that folder. If I have a text file, it's a little bit easier because it just takes the data from it. But if I have an Excel file, I could have a graph. I could have many things. This is why it's so tedious in here. But I go to MD, the second file. I click on the table. Okay. Then I go to the third table, MS, table. I go to the TLPS, table. So I click on each file name and then each table. Yes. Even though they're all named table 1, don't worry. They're named table 1 in those files. When you're consolidating them later on, you'll have an option to change. Okay. So don't worry. After I've done all that, if everyone's okay, is everyone okay still? I hope. I press OK. And it's going back into Power Query Editor. So soon you will see it open. And you can see that it have brought in the whole file, each of the 4 files, and it's got to a table called append data set. Yeah, it's already appended everything for you. However, it brought in some additional information, such as the source name. The category is fine. That's all still the same. If I roll over to the right-hand side, let me just give a quick look. I have everything in here. So this is what I mean by you need to be careful when you take a look at the Power Query. If you see AB123, so it means it doesn't actually have any identification of what this data type is going to be. Okay, so you have to be careful. And if you see any red, so you see how mine's green lines under it? If you see a red line, the red line is telling you there's an error in that column that you might want to address. If you don't address it, it's fine. It will still spit out the error, but that error is unaddressed. Okay, so I look at all this. Yeah, looks okay-ish. And then I can say, okay, it's okay-ish, let's see output it, what it looks like. So I can say home, close and load to. Table is fine. Existing worksheet is fine. Don't add to a data model. Press OK. And so what you're going to see is, of course, what you saw in the append table. I'll put it into one file in Excel right now. The only time you'll have fails in here is if the previous tables are not clean or if the table size itself is greater than 1 million rows. So this is why we make a connection as a query at the end, because if your file is so big that it's greater than 1 million, then you can never really output it onto a sheet because a sheet only has 1,030,000 rows. So you would keep it as a connection to bring it into Power Pivot to do more analysis there. You would not be able to just straight up do analysis in Excel because of the limit of each sheet. So here is the output of it. And this is what, 286,000. So not that many rows, to be honest, but you can see it still took a little bit of time to go through the append process in order to get here. Okay. So if you're okay so far, you can see how you can append from a table itself through table from range, append from a folder in particular, or you can append from a TXT file. So if you had a folder, right now my folder, I'm just going to close this guy. I'm not going to save it. In my folder here, I have a folder full of Excel files. That's okay, but it takes a little bit of time to fine tune exactly what I'm taking from each Excel file. But if I had a file that was a TXT, a folder full of, let me see if we can find one for you here. You don't have this in yours, but if I have a file such as like a 2022 that I have here, that has all TXT files, then the same process I would do is load from the folder, take the text files, transform them, and then output as I need. Okay, so it doesn't always have to be just Excel files. It can be anything. The path, of course, is really important. If the name of your text file changes, or the name, this is the same problem as a website, yeah? If the name changes, you do have to take care of the name consistency, or else your Power Query is going to fail. Are we okay so far with the intro? Now, let's do a practice here. Let me see if I can find something for you to practice. Yeah, here I do. So let me take a look at the time though. Let me just ask, in terms of the folder right now, because I'm just kind of contemplating between the time, do you want to practice through linking to a folder, this time instead of a pen data set to try RFQ combined via PQ? Or do you want me to go into the Power Query merge, the VLOOKUP right now? Put up your hand if you want me to do a practice. Or no hand up means you're ready for something new. Put up your hand if you want to practice. I'll ask one last time. And put up your hand if, don't put up your hand if you're ready to move on to something new. Okay, perfect. So I'll move on to something new then. If you have a need to practice, that is the practice that you would do, okay? So just so you know. Okay, Power Query. Really, really cool, really, really interesting. Okay, so what do I mean by that? I'm going to open up the file here. Excel file, I think it's 13, no, it's 12. 12, right here. And yours might not look the same as mine. So I just want to make sure that yours, you have something that has table on the left-hand side. And on the table design, it says table A. And in the B, table B, PO report. If yours is not sitting in this way, just copy and paste and bring your table onto the same sheet. And if you're ready, put your hands up. If you have both tables on the same sheet, put your hands up so that we can continue to Power Query merge. Okay, so once we're here, perfect, all the hands are up, I think. So put your hands back down. So Power Query can do append, as you saw, can also merge. And remember what we said about merge. And merge is a VLOOKUP, literally a VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP. So looking at this, we have table A, which is the spend report. Table B, which is kind of our reference, let's say, our reference, okay? So if you look at the instructions here, it says for each vendor in PO report, table B. So it depends on which side you want to make as a reference. So if you say this is a reference or the other one's a reference, up to you. But in this particular one, it says make this reference as the original transaction and retrieve information. So think about this like this. I can VLOOKUP from table A to B, or I can VLOOKUP from table B to A. Either way will work. Both of them are merging. But what we're actually doing is this. So far, if in table B, I have vendor name, PO number, text, PO purchase group, stuff like that. But I don't have the department in table B. I don't have the tier, and I don't have spent. So but that information is available on the left-hand side, however. So I have the tier, right? I have the department, and I have the spent. So what if I want to pull up, like I want to know information that I don't have in table B that is in table A? Well, that's exactly VLOOKUP. But this time, we're not going to write any formulas. What we're going to do is this. I'm going to click on table B. Okay, table B. This is a table, so I need to use Power Query. In order to use it, I have to bring it into Power Query Editor by clicking on one cell in B. So I'm on H10 right now. Click on From Table / Range to bring it into Power Query. Does your steps have to be exactly the way I'm doing it? No, but this is one of the ways, okay? This is Excel, so anytime anyone tell you this is the only way to go, not really. You can, as you play with this more and more, there could be easier ways to do this, but I'm just following what we've been doing all class, okay? So I bring this in, perfect. I go to Home, Close and Load 2, remember that? Bringing it in as a connection only, okay? No data added to the data model. Okay, that's done. Second table, bring it in to Power Query in the same way. And again, close and load 2 as a connection only. Press OK. And now I'm going to go to somewhere. I can either go to Get Data and launch Power Query Editor to open it up to continue, or I can go into something called Combine Queries right here and merge. I don't know, sorry if you can see my, right beside it, merge and append. I want to merge. Okay, and so in here right now, you don't see anything, and you can see table A and B, so you have to select it. So what this is talking about is which table which direction, where am I going to be writing my VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP? Am I going to start from table B, or am I going to start from table A? Whichever table that I'm trying to write the VLOOKUP from, I need to place that table at the top. Okay, so in the directions, it says table B, linking, so writing VLOOKUP from table B, linking that, and look up information for table A. So table A is my reference. So that means table B is at the top. See? And then what's at the bottom? Your reference. Where are you looking up? Or you're looking up in the table A. Right? And so VLOOKUP is as easy as this now. So I need to link up these two information. Yes. You know, typically you have to say, okay, which column, which lookup value am I linking to? Okay, well, I still have to do that, but I don't have to state exactly what I want back until I need to use it. So watch this. So between B and A, the commonality between them is the vendor name, So I click vendor name. I click vendor name. VLOOKUP, XLOOKUP is complete. What? I don't see anything. Well, you've just connected these two tables already through a merge that you said these two columns are connected. So then therefore B can take information from A as you need. And so you'll see at the bottom here, it says left join kind, left outer, all from the first, matching or referencing from the second. If you click down, you'll see a right, all from the second, matching from. So it depends on where you write your VLOOKUP, the concept. Then you can kind of which direction am I going to write the VLOOKUP? Where am I looking to? Then you have a bunch of other types of relationships that you can make. Okay. You also have this button here underneath called the Use Fuzzy Match to perform a merge, which we'll use later. But just a hint here, when you use a fuzzy match, what that means is a wild card. So when Alpha BAM Ltd is in here, not Alpha BAM Ltd, but it's Alpha BAM Ltd Canada, for example, you might use a fuzzy match to match those two by clicking this button here. Okay, we'll get to this a little bit later. I'll press OK. It takes you back into the Power Query Editor as always. Okay. And I'm on the merge table right now, which has the information merged. However, you don't see any results here because I haven't indicated which columns I want it returned. So if I go to the table A, remember I'm on table B, V looking up to table A. So in the merge table, I will see a table A. At the top of it, you'll see a 2-direction arrow. This, if I click it, is where I can indicate which columns I want returned to me. So for instance, I'm going to cancel this for a second. just so you can see. We wanted to retrieve the department and the tier and the spending into table A is what we want. So in here, once I've linked it, I have to click the double arrow and deselect all and say, I want the department, I want the tier, I want the spend. And as soon as I do this, I press OK, you will see the information looked up directly into this table because that you made that merge connection. See, conversion department. So table for the tier and the spend. So I've already done the VLOOKUP without the VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP without the XLOOKUP. And now I can output this and say close and load to. Give it a second here. Table is fine. A new worksheet is fine. Just make sure it's not added to the data model. I press OK. And now you can see the result of the table with linked information that I didn't have before. So Power Query it can do exactly VLOOKUP, XLOOKUP within it without any other intervention. Okay. I hope that was clear and you see how to do the merge. That's practice, shall we? So I'm going to say, hey, this 12 merge, I'm going to close it. I'm not going to save it. I'm not going to save it. Okay. And so this time, let's see if there's something else that I can. No, we'll keep the same file. Why don't we do this? Okay. So if you don't mind, I want you to open up, again, the 12 merge file. This time, do it yourself. I'm not going to do anything for you. You have the two tables, merge them. But this time, don't answer the first one if you're already done it. Answer the second one. So now you are bringing the two tables into Power Query. You want to build a merge, but this time you want to bring in A, the PO numbers in B. Okay, so you're in A, you want to bring in the PO numbers in B. So give that a try. And I'll show you again step by step following, but try to do it again yourself, okay? And when you've done it, put up your hand, or else in about 5 minutes, I'm going to start showing you on the screen how to do that. Give it a try. In 1 second, I'll be right back. So keep working on it. Oh, let me let Stephen in. Keep working on it. And so we're doing the practice on merge right now in Power Query on the file 12 merge. And we're just following the instruction up here to merge from B to A or from A to B. And right now I'm asking everyone to do a merge from A to B. Okay. I hope you weren't waiting for very long, Stephen. And put up your hand once you have created the merge. and output or load the table out. Okay, so I'm gonna start doing it in case you're stuck. So same idea, yeah? So I'm gonna bring them straight in to the table, so into the Power Query. I'm gonna try to do something here. I'm gonna skip the bringing in the table into the Power Query. I'm just gonna go straight into get data, combine queries, merge. And you can only do this. The main thing is you need tables created. If you have tables created, then you at least can select the tables. But right now, if I go there, you see how there's no tables? What that means to me is that, oh, Jason, you can't skip this step. You still have to bring them into the Power Query editor first as tables because there's nothing in your Power Query. So I have to back up. I'll say, okay, fine. I'll go to the table, bring it in, close and load to as a connection only. And table B, do the same thing. I bring into Power Query Editor as a connection only. Okay, so I'm gonna wait, connection only, press OK. So I have the two tables brought in here, then I can do the merge. Now in Power, so just now I showed you just like go straight to get data, combine data, merge. This time I'm gonna go inside Power Query Editor and show you where that is. It's the same place as where the append was. So I'll go here. Two tables are there. I'm going to click on table B. Just it goes through every single one of these on top to bottom. Yeah. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to go to transform. See if it's there. Let me just pull this down a little bit. Transform. No, it's in the home. And then in the middle where it says combine, merge queries. Merge query as new. So we'll let that open up. The same prompting window opens up for you. But remember, this time what I'm looking for is the following. I'm looking at table A, not table B, table A, and I'm retrieving the PO information from table B. So table A is at the top because that's where I would typically write my VLOOKUP. So wherever I'm writing the formula, in practice of Excel is which table should be at the top. This is important. If you put in the wrong place, wrong table, wrong place, it will fail. It will have problems. It's like looking up backwards, basically. Table B. And again, remember, what is the value that you would use from table A to go to table B? So let's say if you're matching is in the first column versus the third column, then you would highlight those two. Mine happens to be both on the same first column. So I would click this and I would click that and just look at the bottom where it says this to see, hey, does it match? So it says it matches 5 out of 33 rows of the first table. Okay, 5 out of 33. So you can improve the matches by clicking on use fuzzy match if you like. But right now we'll leave this as is. Okay, and I'll press OK. And again, after you merge, same like appending, you'll get a merge table, much like an append table. And on the right-hand side of your merge, you'll see a table B, where it has the double arrow. You click it open, and you say, I want the POs. And I press OK. And you'll see the POs. And remember, it only match 5. So for example, J dash plus energy. Why is that a null? Well, because if you look here, J plus energy, that's nowhere in the table B. Therefore, it gives you a null, much like an NA and V lookup. So you're still going to hit the same problems if you don't have basically clean data. It's still going to be garbage in, garbage out. So, but at least the cleanup process is a little bit more streamlined, and you can catch errors more systematically than one by one, as we did in Excel the previous day. Okay. So that's how you would do a merge. That's how you would do a merge. So if you're okay so far with the merging process, and I understand you probably need more practice, so I would recommend that you practice on your own. But if you're ready to move on to fuzzy matching, let me know by hands up. Perfect. Perfect. I got 2 hands. Okay, perfect. 6 hands. Awesome. I'm going to close and load 2 and keep it as a connection only, just to complete the steps. Then I'm going to close the file, so it doesn't really matter. I'm going to close this. And I'm going to close this file, not saving it. And then I'm going to go to the fuzzy matching, which is 14. Oh, fuzzy match 14. Give it a second here. So just to show you what this is talking about, fuzzy matching, okay? So right now, I have 2 tables, an invited side and an ISNet world side, okay? There's only 2 columns for each of them. So actually, the first one only has 1 column. The second one has 2 columns here. And so if I were to look at this, so if I look at the supplier contractor name of the first versus a supplier contractor name or contractor name of the second, well, sometimes you will have names that are not exact, like Zico Inc. and then Zico Canada. And then, well, are they the same contractor? Are they different? Maybe they're meant to be different. In that case, you might not want to use fuzzy matching, because what fuzzy matching means is that when you're trying to VLOOKUP from one side to the other, when I look up Zico and I have a Zico Inc. and a Zico Canada, are they the same? So what fuzzy matchings does is it does a calculation. So it does a calculation between Zico and Zico Canada. And it says, how closely are these matched? Are they 80% or more the same? If they're 80% or more, that's the default number, okay, by the way. So it's going to calculate Zico Inc. and Zico Canada. Is it 80% or more matched or not? If it is more than 80% matched, when you check that fuzzy match, what it will do is it will say, oh, these, and they shouldn't be. These 2, you can obviously see they're less than 80% matched. If the number percentage match is greater than 80%, when you VLOOKUP, they will VLOOKUP to be the same value because you have checked that fuzzy match. So kind of a tricky thing. So let me show you how it works. The way it works is exactly the same as we did previous in merge, except this time you just check the fuzzy match, and then you indicate a couple of options if you wanted to. So first, I'm going to bring these tables into Power Query Editor. So please do that the same as me. Okay, so I'm going to bring these into my Power Query Editor. And you might be seeing that this is kind of redundant because we already did that. So let me delete what I have. If you don't see the 3, like you don't see invited 2, then bring it in the first time. But I see invited twice, so I've already done this. So I'm going to delete mine. And so the whole point of this right now is that when you go to your Power Query Editor, you should have 2 tables, invited and ISNet world. Okay? Invited and ISNet world. Okay. And so what you're going to be doing here, this is the problem here is I've already done this on this file, so therefore it's pretty much done already. So you're seeing all this. So what I'm going to do now from here, once this is done, is I'm going to go to the second one. I'm going to go to home, merge queries, merge as new. So merge means to overlap the tables. Okay. And I want to look up the invited table, the first table with 1 column. And you can see that I have additional information in here, but normally I don't have any information. I want to bring contractor name and status acknowledgement. Because I've already done this merge before, that's why you see these 2 here. Normally the first time you won't see these here. Then I go to ISNet world, which has additional information. I'm trying to match the contractor name with the contractor name. But you can see only 37 are matched within my contractor name out of 271. If I click on this use fuzzy match, remember what I said is it tries to calculate how many are greater than 80% the same in the second table before it brings. So now it's 182 that's going to be brought from the first table. But this option here, I know it's really easily checked, but when you check it, the amount of calculation that's required explodes. Because think about it, every single item in there has to be compared with the rest of the items. Right now, I might only have 999 rows. What if happens if I have 1,000,000 rows? Well, it's going to slow you down quite a bit because it has to do the calculation first per item for 1,000,000 items, and then indicate whether or not it's 80% the same or not in order for you to match this or not. So it takes a lot of capacity when you do fuzzy match. If I click this down, see the threshold? What the threshold means is optional right now. It's 80% right now, but you can say 0 to 100. You can say, oh, it has to be 60% the same. Then it's enough. So if you say whatever number here, it's 0 to 100, then it will match yours to be more closely as 80, higher than 80, less than 80, whatever you say. So it runs from 0 to 100. Ignore case, as you can imagine. Uppercase and lowercase, does it matter? No. And does it matter if I rearrange left to right, right to left, if it contains? You indicated that as well here. But that's it. You press OK. And you'll see the merge come out shortly. Give it a second here. And you'll see some nulls again. Remember, there's certain ones that are not matched. And again, if I didn't have these two columns here, I can click this arrow open. Okay, and I can say, oh, I want, I only have two columns that I can look up from the other table. So I can say, hey, can you just give me the status of acknowledgement? It's not even spelled correctly. Sorry about that. So then it'll bring in, of course, much like VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP, information from the second table to here, using the fuzzy matching to help us get a little bit more information than what we had in the previous. Is this okay so far? We don't have a lot of time left to practice. So again, I'm going to close this guy. I would advise you, if you have time, please spend some time through the examples that we have and practice them. So each of the examples typically have instructions at the top and some answers to it. This one in particular doesn't. So try to run these on your own and see if you can go as smoothly as you see in class. My experience is that typically it's not going to go as smoothly, but as you work through the problems, aligning the columns, it will get better and better. Okay. Last thing, but not least, that I have to show you in this class is the following. You don't have this file open. Okay. You don't have this file open. Let me just see here. But I'll open two files for you to show you this example, okay? You're probably not going to have a lot of time to practice this, but this will conclude our class really, really well in terms of why we need tables, why we need Power Query, why we need all these things, and how does it come together, okay? And what is going to come together? I'm going to close all these. And I'm going to have two files left open. One is called the 13 append and on pivot. And the other one is my file called sales pivot table. And it has nothing on it. You don't have this file, so I can send it to you later today as well. But basically what we're trying to say is this. I have information. Let me just make sure a little bit bigger. I have some transactions not tabled yet. I have some card fees not tabled yet. I have some price list not tabled yet. So what if I want, this is the transaction I'm getting. I have the card type, payment type, which if I use the table can retrieve for me the fees. If you think about the VLOOKUP, a merge could happen here, yeah? Or Power Query, this can happen through an XLOOKUP, VLOOKUP, or merge. Then I have units sold, but I don't know how much each unit is priced. Well, I can, however, use the sales type to match in the sales type to bring in the prices. in the same place. Again, I would have to bring this into Power Query to merge it, or I can do different things to it. But you know what? I'm going to do something a little bit different. And what is this different? This different is talking about data model, talking about Power Pivot. How can I use a pivot table to link up all three of these datas so that I can pivot out, but from three different sources at the same time? Let me show you. Control T. You don't have to do anything. You just watch, okay? The concept is what's important here. The first table has no name. I'm going to name it something called, I don't know, transactions. Transactions, okay? Card fees. I make it a table. And I'll call it fees. And I know this is poor. I'm just trying to, for the sake of time, speeding it up. Usually I do a T, fees. And this one here, Control T. Okay. And this is the third one. This is the price. So I'll say price. Okay. I got 1, 2, and 3 table. And yes, typically I'll bring in this to Power Query. I would merge them and I'll consolidate and I'll output a pivot table. But look, I don't have to do any of that. I can just, seriously, I can just make relationships right now between the tables. And this is why it's so important to make tables, because you can, once you have tables, you can automatically relate these information together exactly like a VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP with a relationship. Like what? Like how? Okay, so look, remember we said the first table, transactions, this payment type links or can link to the second one, the fees, and retrieve for information that you don't have. So I have 2 tables with information that I don't have, price and fees. And the only way I can link to them is if I VLOOKUP or XLOOKUP E and C to get to them. But remember, we are talking about Power Pivot, Power Query, which means we don't need any of that. We just need a relationship. So I go to data, okay? And in data, if I go to the right-hand side where it says data tools, you'll see a data model. That's the same terminology when you are doing a pivot table and it says, do you want to add this to the data model? See that cube? That is Power Pivot. I'll say, and if you don't see this, it's okay. If you don't see it's okay. You should still see something called relationship. So click on relationship. This is how we used to work with things without Power Pivot that you can see this nice icon here now. And in the relationship, there's nothing. If I set up a relationship, much like merge, much like VLOOKUP, XLOOKUP, then I can connect the information from the tables automatically. So I click new, and now this is really tricky, But the concept here is the same, is where am I starting to write the VLOOKUP? Where am I writing the VLOOKUP? And where am I looking to? Okay, where am I looking to? But the naming of this, you see how it says foreign and primary? Foreign and primary. This is a little bit different than what we're used to, okay, in terms of writing VLOOKUP. Okay, so the foreign, so the first we have 3 tables. So if I click this open, you see there's fees, there's price, there's transactions. Yeah, fees, transactions. So I'm going actually to the transactions, okay, where I need information. I don't have the information here. And the column that is foreign here is that depending on what I'm connecting to. Let's say I'm connecting to the fees table. Well, to connect to the fees table, I need the payment type, which is the column payment type. Let me see if I have it here. Payment type. Yeah. Then related to table, which table? Well, the fees table. And related to column primary. So that primary means it's unique values in there. Foreign means MasterCard can appear many, many times. But in the fees table, MasterCard only appears once. That means that's the primary. So fees, payment type. And I press OK. And I have that relationship set up. Similarly, I say new again. And I say, well, I also want the prices. Well, where do you want to? So same, I start with the transactions, foreign. And I say, oh, the prices. Well, the prices require sales type. And related to the price table, primary. I know this part might be overwhelming for a lot of people, but the idea is how would you relate the tables to if you had to VLOOKUP? This is what the relationships mean. You might have to look up on the video and try this again on a slower pace to see this, okay? Because it's kind of confusing. So I have two relationships in here. Once I have the relationships in here, watch this. I go back to the transactions. I go to insert pivot table right here. I say, okay, on a new sheet. I don't add this to the data model yet, but I could. I can say add to the data model now. I say, okay. You see how right now it looks no different than our previous pivot table, right? But look, this is the active. What if I go to the all? Ooh, I now have all three tables available to me right now to pivot one pivot table. What? Yeah. So what does that mean? That means I can bring these table information. Watch this. So I can say, hey, can you, let me see what information I have here that I don't have in the previous. So like fees, right? But you have to be careful here. So for example, I can say, the, transaction side, I want to bring the sales type here like so. So I have it here. And I want to know like the prices, right? So I'll say the prices, I'll drag and drop into here. And you can see like relationships may be needed, auto detect, manage relationships, and you have it right there. It's already set up, but it's not working properly. So when you see 5190, and the reason why it's not working properly yet, and I just want to open the can of worms, just so you know that you can connect them. The reason why it's not working properly is, look at this. You're in the transaction side. You're making a pivot table. A pivot table says a column filtered by. So I drew in this sales type, which is fine. Then I said, okay, I have the connection. So I want to bring in the prices here, right? So you would expect that it spits this out for you. But the problem why it's not setting up properly is because, so you're looking up all this information back, and let's say flight and cruise is $100. But what am I doing with that $100? Well, I didn't say. What am I doing with the $100? Multiply by this, should it just appear as 100? Well, I haven't said anything about that. So therefore, I haven't used, yes, I have set up the relationship, but I haven't used it at all. So therefore, I get into some problems because then I can't output just nothing. I can't just output, you can't VLOOKUP values, but with no return in what you're trying to return. So therefore, as I use this more and more, I have to say, look, what am I doing with this? What am I doing with this? This leads to the second can of worms, and this is the following. When you're in the pivot table fields, and very few teachers will tell you about this, when you see you see all the tables, you set up the relationship, this is Power Pivot. I can right-click on the transaction and add measure. You know what add measure is? Add measure means I can use DAX formulas. I can use calculations or formulas that I can use that pulls information or consolidate information from any other table and bring it all together for me. See this? And I can say, okay, my new calculation is this, and I can pull from various places. And look at this, okay? Watch this. I can say if. What does this mean? This means you can write an if statement inside a pivot table if you learned a little bit more about DAX formulas and a little bit more about relationships. Really? Yeah, that means you can write if statements within pivot tables if you know where to go. First, you have to make tables. Second, you have to have relationships. Third, you have to start learning new formulas, such as if inside formula. So if just in case you're like, if exists already in Excel, what do you mean if? But if I show you something, sum. Here in the DAX side, in the Power Pivot side, not do I only have sum or sum if, things like that. It's sum X, summarize, sum columns. So what does this mean? This means previous to this, we probably did a pivot table, and then we had another pivot table, and another pivot tables. And a long time ago, I used to VLOOKUP pivot tables results, and then pull the information and then consolidate. Why are you doing that when you can already do that through a relationship? Well, I didn't know how. Yeah, neither did I. But because now you have tables, tables can form relationships like this. And then you can use calculations that's above and beyond a regular pivot table. Hence, it's called Power Pivot. I think my time is up, but I'm just going to show you exactly where Power Pivot lies before we end the class. If you load up Power Pivot, which is not easy, where you would load it is over here, File, just to show you, just to have it in the video, Options. I think it's Add-ins. And it's COM add. I'm going really fast here right now because I'm out of time. So you might have to backtrack the video. And I go to Go. You'll see a tool called Power Map, Power Pivot. Check that, press OK. And what you'll have on your screen is a button called Power Pivot. And if you go click on Power Pivot and you go to Manage, I press OK. See if it'll open for me. We'll see. Then what will open for you is the new, let me see, it didn't open for me. So what you'll see is, you'll see very much like Power Query, a new window that says Power Pivot. And if you click to the last, I don't have it here, it's not showing on mine. If you click to the last ribbon tab, it will say Relationship. If you click it, you will see all the tables and you will see very similar setup layout as Access. So there also, if you bring it into Power Pivot, you can set up the relationship much more easily through the actual window than the one we went through, okay? So big cans of worms opening. I know it's very, very tricky what you saw, but all the processes to consolidate everything we talked about. Creating a table is really beneficial in removing addresses. Creating a table is really interesting and useful for formulas that we talked about, for Power Query, whether you want to append or you want to run a regular formula and you want to, VStack. Tables are crucial. If you don't have tables, it's going to be really tricky in update in pivot tables. If you don't have a table, you can't do Power Pivot. If you don't have a table in Power Query, it will force a table out. It will create a table for you. Everything requires a table. Everything that is structural and repeatable requires a table because a table updates quickly and dynamically. So if possible with your Excel sheets that you can make a table and it doesn't affect other people, I would recommend that you make a table. But if you work with many other people and there's a sheet that people have been using for, I don't know, eons, decades, yeah? And don't touch my table, don't touch my sheet. Maybe in those cases, you might have to make a table somewhere else and don't make the table directly on there. Because you know what will happen if you make a table on there is that their formulas, which previously required all the addresses, will all be broken. And they will be like, who touched this thing? So have a conversation, play around a little bit with what you have so far, and then see if you can make some changes slowly first by yourself. Okay? I've opened up a lot of cans of worms. I'm sorry. I hope that I'm trying to upgrade you to Excel 2024. So there's a lot of things that have been all this that you see right now is new to most of people, but it's been around for 10 years. So not really new anymore. It's just things that we probably haven't learned yet. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. Thank you. I'm 3 minutes over. I'm so sorry. But I'm going to stop here. I will send you the recording of this today's meeting as well. I will talk to Supply Chain Canada and see if I can leave an email for you guys from me. Typically in my classes, I like to leave my email. That way, when you hit problems, you can send me screenshots and can help you. Just there's no charges or stuff like that. I'm just helping you because I love when people learn and improve their spreadsheets. Okay, so I'll leave an email. Hopefully they'll let me, and then that way you can practice and then give me any feedback that you have. Okay, I will stop here.